Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. This is MahfuzVanGogh, your dredge guy, and today we're back to Legacy. The Eternal Weekend is coming next week in North America and next month in Europe. And I'm not sure about the exact dates in Japan, but I'm going to Italy next month. So I want to, once again, dedicate myself here on this channel to test every possible dredge variant to see which one is better suited for this metagame. If you're watching me, if you have been watching me since last year when I started this channel here on YouTube, you know that there are no secret calls in my decks. Sometimes I just choose to do something completely different just to test a new approach, and sometimes it works. Like in today's example, this is Turbo Dredge 6.1, and with this deck I managed to win a Legacy Challenge a couple of months ago, and I got second place in really hard tournament, the Legacy Showcase Challenge, some months before. And for me, this is one of the best experience that I ever lived as dredge player in Legacy. This deck can do so much. You have, of course, the dredge package, but the numbers are important. I will not explain everything again here, so if you're new here on this channel, please check my older videos. We have several videos dedicated to Legacy gameplay with this deck and other similar decks. But the different thing today is that I will not play in the Legacy Challenge. Today is Saturday, and the Legacy Challenge already started a few hours before now. I was sleeping. I will play in the EcoCup tournament. He is a content creator, and every month he organizes Legacy tournaments. I believe he also have some vintage tournaments. This is my second time participating in a Legacy tournament organized by him. And today's the stakes are higher because the winner of today's tournament will not only win a prize, something I believe around 50 treasure chests here from Magic Online, but also the Eternal Weekend invitation. So we're talking about something around $150 in value here for the first place, I believe, something like that. And if you want to know more about Eco's tournament, Eco's creations, he is a great player and he also has great content here on YouTube. Please go check his YouTube channel. I will leave the link here on the description of this video. So can you imagine playing a Legacy tournament today and just winning the ticket for the next Eternal Weekend, plus some sweet chests here from Magic Online. I'm not gonna lie, I believe it is been pretty hard to play Dredge in wide metagame, but I also believe this tournament's metagame will have probably more tempo decks, maybe Reanimator decks. So I don't think we need to do many different things on this build. If you want to prepare yourself to meet, for example, Mystic Forge decks or other fast combo decks like Storm, maybe we could include something extra in your sideboard. But against tempo decks, Reanimator decks, other blue decks in general, I believe this configuration here is just fine. I won a Legacy Challenge recently with this exactly 75 cards, and I also had a great second place in a Legacy Showcase Challenge with more than 300 people some months ago. This is my bread and butter, and it's good to be playing Legacy again. If you're new to this channel, please let me know here in the comments and go check our older videos as well, because there I'll explain you in detail how this deck works. But as usual, I'll play the tournament, but I will not play it silently. I will explain to you all of my plays so you can understand how to play this deck at a high level. Hopefully you're excited to get this ride here with me. Click the like button, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts here in the comments below. And let's do it right now. Alright guys, round one, we are on the draw, and I will keep this. We are against kirdiekirdie. We're paired against kirdiekirdie. I'm not sure if we played before, and I'll keep this because we have several draws that can put this hand directly on the top, like any other enabler, because we already have our 2 breakthroughs here. We don't have more than 2 in our deck. So any looting, any auto gaze, any ADD, even another land is good according to what our opponent is playing. So scouting turn, maybe a tempo deck, underground sea, maybe Reanimator, and Tamio. So good luck, have fun you too. So I have some plans here. Let's see what we draw. Okay, another dredger. So I think let's just discard Go Garglyph Troll at the end of our turn, since we kept 7 cards. This way you can try breakthrough 2 turns in a row, except if my opponent has Wasteland. So my opponent's Tamio will attack us and investigate. And Brainstorm, alright, Tamio will flip immediately. My opponent thought for some moments there, maybe it wasn't a... Oh, okay, they have a fetch land, that's why. Tamio goes up, and now my opponent fetches immediately. Maybe they have another cantrip. Oh no, Thoughtseize, alright. So one of our breakthroughs will be discarded here. I don't see my opponent going for the other 3 cards. Okay, after this Thoughtseize, our hand is not so great, because if my opponent has a Daze or a Force of Will, we don't have ways to... Okay, several Dredgers is a good thing. I would like to see an Otherworldly Gaze, because if my opponent counters our breakthrough, we need to find something else with Otherworldly Gaze, because we have this basic mountain here haunting us. Okay, my opponent has Force of Will, but now they have only 1 remaining card in their hand. In case this is your first time watching this deck in action, the basic mountain was something debatable in the past. Some players don't like the basic mountain, but since everyone is playing artifacts against graveyards, sometimes in the main deck like Spell Bombs, Nihil Spell Bombs, or Tormod Script, or Soulguide Lantern, and etc., and they also have Wasteland, having a basic mountain to cast Shenanigans is essential after sideboarding. And Wasteland is everywhere, so if your opponent plays Temple or Eldrazi or other decks with Wasteland, having access to basic mountain when you need to cast Faithless Looting, and basic island when you need to cast your other enablers is actually good. So my opponent Tamios went down to grab Brainstorm back. Unfortunately, you cannot attack yet unless we find Anger next turn. My opponent is sculpting their hand. Now a Ponder, shuffling, alright. We can cast another Amoeba next turn. So let's find Otherworldly Gaze, please. Dredge 6. Not yet. Let's play our basic mountain. We have a couple of Therapy in our graveyard, but not exciting things to do with this Therapy yet. We could cast it just to pick at our opponent's hand, or to try to discard our Grave Trolls, since we only have Golgari Thug and Sync Redeem, which are fine. It's fine to have just Dredge 5 instead of Dredge 6. I'm not sure if we should spend our single Therapy. I would like to have Poxwalkers there first, or maybe a second Breach. We already have Dredge Return and Noxophagonas there. We need just 1 more creature and a Poxwalkers or a second Breach to try to win this game. Okay, let's pass the turn and see what my opponent does. I'll take this opportunity to... Okay, Tammy goes up. To say that I kept a risky hand, but we had 2 breakthroughs and dredgers, so maybe if I were on the play... Oh, my opponent is drawing cards. If I were on the play, maybe... yeah, no, I think I would probably mulligan that hand. But Arkish Bowmasters, alright. Is my opponent killing my Narcomoeba? Or just... Yeah, okay, we'll have a 2-2 after that. Which is actually better against Tamio, but I'm not sure if we want to attack Tamio here. Probably not. We just want a creature. So, Dredge 5. Okay, now we have an Otherworldly Gaze. My opponent has 2 remaining cards in their hand. This Otherworldly Gaze might be countered, but it's our best bet, right? We have a couple of Therapy, Dredge Return, and Oxophagonas. If we have something good on top, we can even win the game out of nowhere. Okay, Poxwalker's there, and 1 LED for next turn. That's sweet. So I think the best bet here is just to be patient. Let's keep LED on top and pass the turn. We need to hold this together for another turn. If we cast a couple of Therapy here just to bring back a Poxwalkers and pick at our opponent's hand, this is not that good. So let's pass. Next turn we have the win, probably, unless my opponent counters our LED. Okay, Tamio went down. My opponent is sacrificing Tamio to look for new cards. That's good, that is a desperation mode. Let's hope that my opponent doesn't find exactly what they want. Shuffling their library, we like that. A second Tamio, alright. Oh no, after shuffling their library, my opponent found their main deck Spellbomb. And this is why my opponent will crack it immediately. We are living in hard times. We are having hard moments in this metagame full of main deck answers to grave hate. And that's because we had that not sweet no changes from Wizards of the... It would be so good to decrease the... Okay, we drew our Lion's Eye Diamond. We need to draw something else here to try to rebuild our graveyard. We can do that. We can do that. We need to... My opponent has only 3 cards in their hand. Maybe... I think since we don't have a Breach from below, let's attack Tamio here. Because my opponent will need to double block and we can kill Orcish Bowmasters. As I was saying, at this moment we can put 6 cards in our graveyard. We need 7 to crack Cephalic Elysium. And if something got the Hammer ban, something from Blue-Black Reanimator, Dredge will suddenly be even stronger. But I will not complain. stop complaining. Okay, my opponent has Kaito. Kaito is a good card. My opponent can Surveyor 2 and draw 1 now. How many spell bombs my opponent has in the main deck? Sometimes 1, sometimes 2. Not sure how many. It depends. Each player has their own opinions on that. Okay, my opponent is thinking here on this surveying action here. One thing that you can have in mind if Spellbomb is prevalent in the metagame, if everyone is playing a Spellbomb and also Thought Seizes, you can have some copies of Leyline of Sanctity in your sideboard. Is a great sideboard card against a Graveyard Hate that targets you. Okay, so Tamio went back again, returning Force of Will. Luckily, we don't rely on resolving spells here. Cabal Therapy is good. Guys, I know it seems weird, but we can even win the game here. Maybe. We have 7 cards now. Just checking. And let's see. We still have Anger. We don't have Dread Return anymore. And we still have 2 Poxwalkers in our decks. And 2 Bridges. So the plan is to create a bunch of zombies and attacking for lethal since Tamio went down. Let's see what we can do here. Maybe not for lethal because we don't have 1 Bridge and 1 Poxwalkers anymore. But we still have 3 Therapies. Dredge 6, Poxwalkers is there. And 1 Therapy and 1 Bridge, and Dredge 6 again. Okay, only a single Narcomoeba. My opponent has 5 cards in their hand. We can cast Faithless Looting, but it is probably better to check for Daze first. We can name Force of Will or Daze with this Therapy. I didn't see any copies of Daze so far in this game, and my opponent went down 22 cards in their deck, so probably Daze is the best option. We have a second Cabal Therapy there, but I would like to cast that Therapy after we find our last Bridge from below. Or maybe our last Poxwalkers. So let's name Daze here. My opponent is thinking, maybe they have both Force of Will and Daze. Okay, after some moments, let's name Force of Will. Dispose. Yeah, my opponent has both. Dispose was pretty revealing that my opponent also had a Force of Will. Or at least have a... It was something like 1.5 minutes of pause. So let's take Daze and then resolve Faithless Looting, right? Just checking again. Yeah, now we will only have 1 remaining Cabal Therapy. That means that we will not have lethal this turn, but maybe we have enough zombies and Anger to attack for lethal, to destroy Tamio and maybe Kaito. This is not a guaranteed win. We lost so many resources with that opponent's Spell Bomb. Oh, my opponent will cast Daze. Okay, I will not pay for this Daze. We could pay here and cast Otherworldly Gaze instead of Faithless Looting, but I think we need to resolve looting here to have a chance. So Dredge 6. Oh, no Anger yet. We have only 7 cards remaining in our deck. I'll not Dredge 6 here. I believe the correct thing to do is just Dredge 4 and have 3 turns to win this game. Okay, Dredge 4. Okay, we found Anger and 2 Narcomoebas. That's great. So Narcomoebas can attack with haste. And since Tamio went down, everything will have their power. We can kill both Planeswalkers this turn, which is pretty good. But this is not a guaranteed win because my opponent has removals and Orcish Bowmasters. So we have 3 turns to try to win this. Can we win this? I will attack Tamio here. I think we need to push some damage here, even attacking my opponent instead of... Because my opponent can just destroy our Narcomoeba or... Yeah, let's attack Kaito here and also here. So Kaito will be destroyed for sure. 3 zombies attacking Kaito. 1 Narcomoeba attacking Tamio. And our last Narcomoeba attacking our opponent, pushing 1 damage. My opponent will go down to 13, and they can kill a zombie here, right? We have 3 cards in our deck. One of them is a Poxwalkers, unfortunately. And we will not have ways to bring back the Poxwalkers, right? Unless we have a land on top. I will not even look for it now, because we have no choice. We just need to have normal draws from now on. Okay, Planeswalkers are down. My opponent draws. They replay the basic island. And Orcish Bowmasters, alright. What? Killing my Poxwalkers? Oh no, I see. My opponent will also destroy one of their creatures before my triggers, right? That means my opponent will spend 2 cards to destroy my bridges and Poxwalkers, and I cannot bring these Poxwalkers back. So I think this is it. My opponent is thinking a lot here. Maybe that wasn't their original plan. But now they will probably fire that Fatal Push, right? Killing Nethergoyf. Yeah, because they can bring it back. Now we can push some damage, but I think my opponent probably has it. And, and a second spell bomb. All right. Yeah, guys, we will lose this game, but let's see. We are fighters. Let's see what we have on top. Is it Poxwalkers? No, it's a Fire Coliseum. So we could actually bring back our Poxwalkers if my opponent had no spell bomb. Let's attack here. For my opponent will double block a zombie. They have only one card in their hand. Down to 9. Unfortunately, you have only 2 turns to win. And my opponent has another Nethergoy from their hand. Choose 6/7 for a single mana. We had our Poxwalkers there. I'll not concede yet, I just want to gain more information to see what else my opponent can do on their turn. But we lost this one. Let's not block here. We're down to 2. We can bring our opponents down to 3. Cabal Therapy was our last. Yeah, unfortunately, Cabal Therapy and Poxwalkers were on the very bottom of our deck. We could have 3 or 4 more zombies if those cards were... Okay, my opponent has a Shieldred's Edict. And my opponent attacks for the win. So guys, we lost our game 1. We need to turn this in our favor now. After sideboarding, I imagine that my opponent will have even more bad cards against us. Now it's time to include Unmask and Shenanigans in. We saw 2 spell bombs. Maybe my opponent has more than 2. Sometimes tempo opponents mix spell bombs with Gravedigger's Cage, with Surgical Extractions or Fire Macabre. So Unmask is pretty good against them. And Shenanigans is pretty good if my opponent has several artifacts against us. Because if we have a Shenanigans in our graveyard and your opponent has a spell bomb and no counterspell, they probably have the urge to crack spell bomb sooner, and then you have the opportunity to rebuild your graveyard. So I think this is just a standard way that I've been doing against tempo decks. Since they have so much against our graveyard, it is important to bring the Dredge Return package down. We could keep Careful Study instead of Anger, but I'll try to keep Anger as a test here, because my opponent had those Planeswalkers, right? And Anger can be good if my opponent has a Tamio, for example. Sometimes we need to bring Tamio's loyalty down before Tamio ultimates. Alright guys, we are back. Oh, this hand is a Keep. We cannot cast Unmask immediately, but we have some options here. We already want to discard Anger anyway, so let's cast Looting, because if this resolves, we can have maybe a black... Okay, my opponent has Force of Will. Exiling Force of Will, that's a good sign. That's an incredible good sign. So let's try again next turn. Hopefully not a turn 1 Spellbomb. No, okay. My opponent kept 7 cards. Yeah, with Forces and Flooded Strand. We will draw Shenanigans. Maybe important for the future. So let's pass the turn. I will let my opponent surveil here. We are already playing around days, so I think it's fine. I don't think we need to play around Force of Negation here. My opponent had 1 extra draw, but since they have Force of Will, extending Force of Will, and we have a Faithless Looting in our graveyard, I think it's fine to cast Authority Gaze in our own turn. Alright, and we find good cards. We found good cards. I will keep Cephalic Elysium here. Oh, my opponent has Brainstorm. They kept the card on top. Maybe it was Brainstorm. And now a Polluted Delta. Cracking it for Underground Sea and Thoughtseize. Great. So my opponent will probably choose Unmask here because our other cards want to be in the graveyard. Yep. Let's draw our Cephalic Elysium now, and I'll cast Faithless Looting with Flashback. Let's value our resources. This is a tempo matchup, not a combo matchup. Okay, it is resolving. Dredge 4 and Dredge 6. Okay. We already have a Grave Troll there. Just in case my opponent has something and we need to rebuild our graveyard, I will discard Anger and Golgari Thud instead of Grave Troll. Maybe this is just a mistake, but this gives us opportunity to just draw an Enabler and rebuild it from 0. Playing against tempo decks in this metagame is so much harder than 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Okay, my opponent has Wasteland. Oh, Barrogoyf! Alright, coming from the sideboard probably. A 5/6 lifelink. Lifelink is hard to deal with, but that probably means that my opponent doesn't have counterspells, so we can maybe win the game soon. Barrogoyf can be good against us in some situations, but I don't think this one is one of them. Let's check for traps before committing to anything else. Okay, no surgicals, no fairies. So what to name here? We have so many different options. I'll name... let's name Kaito here. It's a bad name, for sure, but that would explain my... Okay, my opponent has a Force of Will. And Orcish Bowmasters, which was my first option. Maybe my opponent had just blue Elemental Blast or just Force of Will without the blue Peach. And now they have. So let's crack Cephalic Elysium here first. Dredge 5, and Dredge 4. So far, so good. Blue Elemental Blast against us, huh? We don't have that many red spells, but this can be a game winner if we really need to resolve that Faithless Looting. And my opponent has it in their hand. So let's sacrifice Poxwalkers now. We will have 2 Poxwalkers coming back. And I'll name Blue Elemental Blast, because now Force of Will is just a blank in my opponent's hand. So let's resolve Otherworldly Gaze. We still have one Therapy. Narcomoeba Breach, and I don't think we need this Volcanic Island. So Narcomoeba enters, and let's take that Orcish Bowmaster. Okay, having Death Touch creatures against the Barrogoyf is huge. And now my opponent has only Force of Will and Barrogoyf. They will probably finally fire that Wasteland against our Cephalic Elysium. Can we attack here maybe with a couple of Narcomoebas? Having 2 basics here is so good, because now we can bring back Poxwalkers anytime. I'll attack with a couple of... Maybe if my opponent attacks with Barrogoyf, we just block with the zombie token, right? That's not the worst for us. And we'll probably have more zombies next turn. Okay, let's do it. Let's push some damage. My opponent can attack and come back to 18 life. And then we have lethal or almost lethal. Let's block with... Or maybe we can try to kill Barrogoyf, but I don't think so. My opponent is back to 18. That's fine. My opponent destroys our land. They play Swamp, so they still have Force of Will. Grave Troll. Just another Otherworldly Gaze. Let's check our damage here. Let's cast Otherworldly Gaze first. Okay, Dredge Return. That's exactly what we needed. Now we have the win. Oof. We will win game 2 against a difficult opponent. This time my opponent had no spell bombs, but some counter spells and Thoughtseize. But this wasn't enough to win the game. GG. Let's go to our game 3. Can we change something? We didn't see Kaito, so against Wastelands, maybe we don't need Anger and we can just re-include Careful Study. This is my only doubt here, especially on the draw. But I think it's fine. Even if I want to win today's tournament, I also want to take this opportunity to test my deck against great players, as I think I said that at the intro. So it would be great to win the entry for the Eternal Weekend, but even if we can't win, I will still have a great time here testing my deck. There is still time to do some changes. My opponent is taking time to do their sideboard. It makes sense because Dredge is not that common, right? After some repetition with the Tempo deck, you know how to sideboard against Reanimator, you know how to sideboard against Eldrazi, Prison decks, but against Dredge sometimes it's not that easy. Okay, this is a keep. We have great Dredgers, we have great lands, we have 2 good enablers, and this is especially good if my opponent has a turn 1 spell bomb. We can tempt our opponent in so many ways here. Okay, my opponent has Underground Sea and a Thoughtseize. Okay, now our hand is probably not that good. We have lands and both of our spells have flashback, so my opponent will probably choose Faithless Looting here. My opponent is thinking, I'll play with them. Pick the troll. Okay, my opponent chose Looting. Oh, and Mask is pretty good. Let's check my opponent's hand first. Oh, this is not a good hand. I mean, my opponent has Wasteland, but we have lands. Let's find something good on top. That's... Oh, I would like to have all of this. Can we keep all of them on top? Because my opponent can always stop deck something, maybe another Wasteland or something, so maybe it is good to keep another Volcanic, just in case. Yeah, let's keep Volcanic on top. I obviously want Faithless Looting and IDD. Volcanic is debatable, but since my opponent can have multiple Wastelands and maybe find another counterspell on top, we saw Blue Elemental Blast, so my opponent can maybe counter our Faithless Looting, so it's better to have more things to do on top. So let's try to resolve this looting. No days, please. No days, no Elemental Blasts. Okay, so we discard Volcanic Island. If we're super afraid of interaction for next turn, we could keep Volcanic Island instead of one of the other cards. No, I'm just overthinking here. Of course, we want to resolve this looting here, but I'll wait one more turn because next turn we'll probably have the win guaranteed. We just need to dodge my opponent's next draw. Even if this is just a counter spell, we can crack Cephalic Elysium first and then force my opponent to discard their hand. Polluted Delta, we knew about it. My opponent has 2 Barrogoyfs and 2 unknown cards. They are considering casting something here. Okay, Tamio. And now Grave Troll. Alright, Narcomoeba is here. That means we probably win here, right? We have Cabal Therapy. My opponent had no answer to our Narcomoeba. So let's discard our hand for blue and crack Cephalic Elysium. Dredge, Dredge 12, and Dredge 18. Great. Oh, Dredge with 10 Poxwalkers, Anger, we have everything. And now Cabal Therapy, targeting my opponent. Let's name Barrogoyf. Oh, Orcish Bowmaster. So this was my opponent's thought in the previous turn. So let's resolve Faithless Looting, Dredge, even more cards. We have another Poxwalkers, Cabal Therapy, and 2 extra bridges. Great. I think we have the win this turn, guys. Yeah. If we don't have lethal here, my opponent will need to chump block with Tamio. Orcish Bowmasters. Let's return Ox of Agonas. Yeah, we still have 2 therapies. We have lethal. Yeah. Oof. We managed to win this game after start losing it on the first game. Yeah, another bridge is there. Let's dredge 1. And I'll cast Cabal Therapy, sacrificing Pokeswalkers. You see, as a deck builder, this was Killer Among Us. This was kind of a new thing, right? Including Anger in a dredge deck. But Anger was already there, right? So sometimes I believe we can build new decks from scratch using old cards. We don't need to just look into the newest cards from the new releases. That's the same with Phoenix Dredge in Modern. We already had Arclight Phoenix and Dredge cards, but I was the first person to mix both strategies. So we won. So let's get this green screen fixed for the next round. All right, guys, round 2, we are on the play, and I'll keep it. We're on the draw, I'm sorry. Because this on the draw might be a win on turn 1. Hopefully no thought seizes from my opponent. Because we can dodge a single Force of Will, but not thought seize and Force of Will. So luckily my opponent is playing something else. AyeItsNick. My opponent has Underground Sea, another blue-black opponent, Tamiyo. So we should win on turn 1, unless we cannot chain dredgers. But oh, breakthrough! This is even better, right? Okay, let's see if we can. My opponent has only 4 cards in their hand. They had a mulligan to 6. Okay, they have Force of Will exiling Daze, which is a good sign for us. Hopefully my opponent will not have a second Force of Will. No? Alright. So let's go to town here. I will sacrifice LED for red mana. We have 5 red spells that we can cast from our graveyard. Hopefully we'll find one of them. Dredge 5. Oh. Okay, we couldn't chain dredgers, but we have Pitiless Looting, which is something. We will dredge 3 times at total. Dredge 5. Dredge 5. We have a Poxwalkers there. Oh, no Narcomoebas. It's fine. Our deck kind of betrayed us with only 2 dredgers on the top 26 cards. And now I need to do a quick pause here. I'll be right back. Okay, so my opponent attacked with Tamiyo and reanimated our Therapies. So we are playing against Reanimator. Let's dredge. Okay, we have Poxwalkers. Several Poxwalkers, but unfortunately no Narcomoebas. As soon as we get an Narcomoeba, we will probably win the game. We need a single Narcomoeba plus Dredge Return to win the game on the spot. My opponent has only 2 cards in their hand. They can draw 1 extra card with that clue token. Our own Therapies is attacking us. Reanimating Therapies is pretty good because since we don't have a mountain and we will just slow dredge now, we cannot win with angry zombies. So we need to just flood the board with zombies and Narcomoebas. Our opponent has another land, draws a card. Beautiful swamp. And passes, okay. Passing the turn is good. Come on, Narcomoeba. Dredge 5. Okay, we found a Narcomoeba and Dredge Return. So let's go. My opponent has 2 cards in their hand. We can play around Daze. We cannot play around another Force of Will. So let's see what to name here. We already have 3 cards. We have another Therapy. 2 extra Therapies. I'll name Force of Will. Brazen Borrower instead. Alright. My opponent cannot cast it. So let's bring Ox back. We could bring Satoru back, but we are already pretty deep into our deck here, and we don't want to deck ourselves, so having a 4-2 Ox, I think it's better. So Dredge 6, Dredge 6, Anger is there. Can we have a natural draw here? Volcanic Island, trying to find the mountain. Volcanic Mountain, and Volcanic, no. All of our mountains are already in our graveyard, so Dredge 6. Our last Poxwalker is there, so let's flood the board. This seems already like a win, guys, but this is Reanimator. My opponent can draw an extra card, top deck, entomb, reanimate, something like that, and finding a Trax, so let's not celebrate. Brazen Borrower. And let's get that Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize. And now my opponent is Hellbent. We can create more zombies with our last Cabal Therapy. So we have lethal on board. My opponent needs to flip Tamiyo or find a Trax to win this game. What are my opponent's other options? I'm not sure. We have more than lethal here. Okay, draws a card. They need to draw 1 extra card to flip Tamiyo. Okay, my opponent concedes. This time we won game 1, which is huge against the Reanimator. Sideboarding against this opponent is incredibly hard because some opponents will have Doughty Voidwalker, so we need to have bounce spells against Doughty Voidwalker. It is our best choice. But some opponents will not have Doughty Voidwalker, will have Fairy Macabre or a mix. I saw some opponents bringing in Ghost Vacuums. So even their own spell bombs, because they are black decks, right? So they can have some value from spell bombs. But since we don't know yet what my opponent will bring against us, I think I would just include Stern Dismissals here. In the past, I tried including Leyline of the Void against my opponent's deck, but since blue-black Reanimator is so similar to a tempo deck nowadays. I've been seeing them sideboarding in a way to shrink their reanimation plan. Sometimes they don't have animated that anymore. Sometimes just a couple of reanimates. Sometimes they don't have the fatties, and they just play similarly to a blue-black tempo deck. We are back to game 3. I kept this hand for the same reason that I kept a similar hand before. We can win on turn 1 with this. Okay, my opponent plays Underground Sea, Tamio. Let's start with LED played around days. Okay, it's resolved. Unfortunately, we drew our second Narcomoeba here, so that's pretty harsh. But let's go for it. We just need to find another Narcomoeba or a Poxwalkers here with flashback spells. We need to find other Dredgers. Okay, it's resolving. Stink with Imp, Dredge 5. Oh, Narcomoeba was the next card and we couldn't hit Dredgers. We don't have flashback cards. Okay, guys, buckle up. Maybe we just lose this immediately if my opponent deploys a Doubt Voidwalker here. But this had everything to be a turn 1 win, but it didn't work. My opponent has a clue token, Brainstorms, alright. My opponent flipped Tamio, and now they have Engineered Explosives. We will Dredge 5. Now I have Dredgers and Ox and Fiflizuti, now I have everything. That's okay, that's the Dredge variance. Sometimes we just lose to our deck, it can happen. Like 2% of the times, sometimes it happens. Maybe more. We will Dredge 6 now, nothing. My opponent also had nothing, which means they probably don't have the reanimation package in their hand. They are drawing several cards, only 2 lands so far. Tamio went up again, and we will Dredge 6. Yeah, no Narcomoebas. We had 2, one in our starting hand, and we drew another one, and then another one. So yeah. So let's only, my opponent will ultimate Tamio. Let's see what they would do, just to grab more info from their deck. Archish Bowmasters, alright, so yeah. This is like playing tempo, right? My opponent is not going for the reanimation plan. Sometimes I do my sideboarding here exactly like I did, and I see my opponent comboing with on turn 1 with a turn 2 Atraxa, and I don't have any answers. So it's important to see how your opponent do their sideboard on game 2. That's why it's so good to win game 1, because then we will have the advantage on game 3 if you lose game 2, because your sideboarding wasn't the best option. Okay, my opponent has Doubt Voidwalker. That's exactly what I needed to know. They have Doughty, probably several copies. Nobody plays with a single Doughty, so it's important to have the bounce spells. But being on the play, we might try something different here. Let's see. Let's include Unmask. Maybe we don't need Anger or even Ox. I like to create space, create room to include Unmask and 2 or 3 dismissals. Maybe you can play without fear. 2 dismissals maybe, just to have an answer in case my opponent has a turn 2 Doughty. Something is happening here with my model is stuck. Okay, let's mulligan this. Oh, this is so tempting. Should we keep it? Okay, guys, let's keep. I will try a turn 1 here. We could play for a turn 2 here. I could put Golgari Thug and keep both lands, but I will try a turn 1. Let's play aggressively. Let's see if my opponent has a Force of Will. Okay, no force, at least not yet. Let's try to resolve looting, discarding our hand. The right call here would be keeping both Cephalic Coliseums, because my opponent could just counter our first LED, and then we would need to wait just to be sure. But, or maybe my opponent, well, you don't know. No, I think we did right. The thing is, I'm so sad that we couldn't. Okay, my opponent finally hit their Force of Will. So next turn we can crack LED and Cephalic Coliseum unless my opponent has Wasteland. We didn't see Wastelands this game, right? So maybe my opponent is not playing Wasteland. I know that some Reanimator decks are not playing Wasteland currently. As I was saying, I'm still sad that, oh, they have Wasteland. Okay, now we need another Faithless Looting or Ox of Agonas. Some opponents are not playing Wastelands, or maybe in small numbers, but this opponent had a Wasteland. This is game 3, guys. We need to find a red spell in our Dredge 6. In other way here, the silver lining is if my opponent has Wastelands, they probably don't have a turn 2 Voidwalker or even a turn 3. So we might be ahead here. Let's Dredge 6. Okay, Ox. We'll go for it, right? If my opponent has a second Force of Will, let's keep only Poxwalkers and Grave Troll. Yeah. Come on, Ox. If you resolve, I will do an Ox impression like I did before. Ox? Dredge 6. Dredge 4. And Dredge 6. Okay, we have Cabal Therapy and another Poxwalker. We have 2 Therapies, guys. I think we have it. My opponent had only Wasteland. We don't have bridges yet or Dredge Return, but if we hit with this therapy, we probably don't need too much to win this game. So let's name Brainstorm. This is something that can... Oh, my opponent kept a hand with Force of Will, Wasteland, and Reanimate. Okay, so let's take that Reanimate, and I think that's it. I think that's game. Reanimate. Yeah, my opponent has 4 lands now, and we can win in 2 turns. We have 12 power in play. My opponent is passing after playing Polluted Delta. Let's clean this. We'll dredge 6. And now we even have a dredge return, yeah. Let's attack first. Since we don't have anger this game, we are just peaceful zombies. We are not playing with anger. So Cabal Therapy, sacrificing Ox here. Maybe this is actually risky because my opponent can have Daze, and they can also have Brainstorm and then Daze. But I think we are fine to win this game. Let's just try to win now. Daze. Okay, my opponent top decked Orcish Bowmasters. It will not save my opponent. Let's reanimate Ox of Agonas. The favorite Ox in town. The best Ox. The better Ox ever printed. Dredge 6, Dredge 6, and Dredge 6. And another Cabal Therapy, Bridges. Yeah. Oof, guys. We will win our second round. This will be a 5-round tournament. I believe if we win the next 2, let's name Orcish Bowmasters. The next 2 rounds, we are locked in the top 8. Even if we just win the next round, we might already be in the top 8. We need to win 4 to be sure. My opponent will survey you here, but I don't think my opponent can have anything. Oh, my opponent has an Archon of Cruelty. Even if my opponent has an Animated Death plus Archon, my opponent will go up to 9. Yeah, my opponent concedes. We would still have Lethal here. Yeah, Archon of Cruelty will not save my opponent. I have some time to have lunch here, so let's do it, and I'll come back now. Round 3, guys. We are paired against a fellow graveyard opponent, a graveyard player, the Shallow Grave. Let's mulligan here. We are on the play. Oh, no lands. I truly hope that my opponent is playing... Okay, this is already good. This is good enough. Our better hand is on 4. Let's hope that my opponent is playing traditional Reanimator and not mono black deck with Doughty Voidwalker in the main deck. Because I lost to them twice in a row, or maybe more than that, because they were playing mono black. Okay, everything seems to be resolving. All right, Dredge 6, Dredge 5, Cabal Therapy and Poxwalkers. Yeah, my opponent is playing Shallow Grave. We can see because of the graveyard trigger there. In Magic Online, every time one of the players is playing the Shallow Grave card, this will happen. Pay attention. So when you discard your cards after a Faithless Looting, Magic Online asks you which order would you like to discard your cards. This never happened if your opponent is not playing Shallow Grave. So, I mean, there are other cards that care about the order in your graveyard, but usually in Legacy only a Shallow Grave is play. So I could name Shallow Grave here just to be funny, but I think Entomb and Reanimate are better. Dark Ritual is probably our best shot here. Let's think for a moment. I think Dark Ritual is probably our best shot because if my opponent has turn 1 Entomb, that's okay. But if they have turn 1 full combo, yeah, Dark Ritual. And they have Entomb and Reanimate, so they have everything. They also have Lotus Petal. So let's Reanimator on Satoru here. We have 33 cards remaining in our deck. I think we'll have the win here, guys, on turn 1. After a move to 4. We should have an easy breezy win here. Satoru is so busted. Let's take my opponent's second card. Satoru triggers. We still have 2 Narcomoebas in our deck. Only 1 now. This Narcomoeba trigger. Triggers Satoru. Satoru dredges 5. We have another bridge. Everything is working according to the plan. So, Entomb. My opponent told me that it was really impressive turn 1. And I answered on a move to 4. Let's remember that. This is our best turn 1 in this tournament so far. So let's name Grave Troll here because I want to guarantee. We don't need it, right? But I don't need to discard anything now. I just want my triggers. So we can win with Thassa's Oracle, but let's win with a hasty Grave Troll here, right? It's just a better win to win with a giant Grave Troll with haste. I think it's just Magic the Gathering as Richard Garfield intended. So Grave Troll will trigger Satoru. Let's just draw a 13/13 with haste on turn 1, plus 10 zombies plus Satoru himself. And we won. We dealt 35 damage. And now what? Leyline of the Void is important. If this is a shallow grave build, my opponent probably has plan B with the Chain of Smog combo. So Unmask can be good to disrupt their combo. But they also might have a splash to blue, maybe one or another thing. Maybe they also play Show and Tell. So against Reanimator, we obviously don't want reanimation targets, right? Anger is important because my opponent plays Shallow Graves, so sometimes they can just win with haste creatures. And it's so difficult to include 4 copies of Leyline and 4 copies of Unmask in our deck. Can we do it? What else I can shave from our deck here? Let's think. I still like Dredge Return, but maybe one breakthrough, because we'll definitely mulligan until we find Leyline, and sometimes we don't have good hands to cast a breakthrough, or the early gaze is better. And I don't think we have space, we have room for Dredge Return, unfortunately. Oh, this is really good. This is another turn 1, but with a possibility of a turn 2 with Unmask. If my opponent unmasks me or casts a Thoughtseize or similar cards, this can still win on turn 2. This doesn't have Leyline, but this is really good. I'm inclined to just skip it. My opponent is mulliganing. Yeah, let's skip it and put some pressure on our opponent. This has the ability to win on turn 1 again. So, but we'll probably try just a turn 2 here, because my opponent will have something on turn 1. Okay, Lotus Petal and passes. Alright, they might have Entomb plus Reanimate. No, Entomb plus Shallow Grave. And we, of course, drew our Leyline of the Void. But now we can cast Unmask, targeting my opponent. We could also target ourselves here, but this is better. Oh, my opponent has their both Show and Tell plus the Chain of Smog combo. I was expecting only one of them, one or the other. So let's take Show and Tell, right? Because my opponent cannot combo next turn. They need more mana. Even if they... No, if my opponent top decks the Dark Ritual, they can win next turn. But this is their only chance to win. I'm inclined to just go for a turn 2 here, because on turn 2 we have the win guaranteed. Oh, now we have an LED. Any order? Now I think we can go for a turn 1, right? Guys, again, I think the right call here is just go for it, because we have 2 copies of Faithless Looting, but we have a single Grave Troll, and this might backfire. It's rare, but in the past this backfired me. So the right call was definitely just going for it, but I'll try to dodge a Dark Ritual here from my opponent and win guaranteed on turn 2. But again, this is a shot in the dark. They probably... Oh, my opponent will try to reanimate my Grave Troll. No, this doesn't work. Yeah, my opponent lost 5 lives now. Let's explain here. When you try to reanimate a Grave Troll, they will check your graveyard, not mine graveyard, if you try to reanimate my Grave Troll, right? And since my opponent has no cards in their graveyard, this just doesn't work. Yeah, my opponent says here that I thought it entered with a counter. I must be misremembering. Actually, for a couple of years, this was bugged on model, and Grave Troll was actually entering with a counter, but this was a bug, and it was finally fixed 3 years ago, I think. We'll easily win from here now, because we have 2 lootings plus a Phallic Elysium. Let's dredge. We have several dredgers. Yeah. And we would also have the win in the previous turn, considering what I'm seeing here in our graveyard. Oh, my opponent is recording this event. So the Shallow Grave, if you're watching this, because I'm also recording this event, let's focus here. Kraken Cephalic Elysium here. Yeah, we can mill our entire deck and win with Angry Zombies. Let's check both videos later. I want to check your own video. I want to see... I love to see my recorded matches from the other player perspective. It's really good to learn more about keeps and moves and everything in between. Let's keep all of those cards on top. So guys, that means we are 3-0. That's great. We won against Tempo, Reanimator, and let's name Chain of Smog here. But we don't need to name anything. We won against Tempo, Reanimator, Blue-Black Reanimator, and combo build. Reanimator combo build, I mean. Witherblum Apprentice. Yeah. I will not name Grizzlebrand. You can have Grizzlebrand in your hand. You can keep it safe, I mean. A Killer Among Us. Let's have more zombies. We already have lethal, but since my opponent is also recording, let's give them a show. Pleasure as always. Good luck you too. Let's attack. Oh, our deck finally did its thing. We won our rounds 1 and 2, but with difficult mulligans, right? And our deck finally did its thing, comboing fast. Okay, we are on the play. This is a keep. We are paired against mephidro. This is not... This used to be a great keep in the past, but these days, against people with Spell Bomb in the main deck, or sometimes Force of Negation, something like that, this can backfire, but hopefully this is good enough. My opponent is mulliganing to 6. To 5. Is this a combo deck? Oh, my dog wants some attention. Hila. There. Okay, so my opponent kept 5 cards. And let's start with LED. Let's see what my opponent does about that. Okay, it resolved. Scouting turn now. We'll crack it for a volcanic island. And careful steady. I'll not crack LED in response because I'm smelling a counterspell here. Yeah, Force of Will, Exiling Days. Alright. So my opponent now has only 3 cards in their hand. Hopefully not Wasteland because we have only 1 land. Okay, Polluted Delta. We could just discard our hand here and go for slow dredging, but let's wait 1 more turn here. Okay, Bridge from Below. Because with a second land or any other enabler, this hand is a huge success. My opponent has Brainstorm. And I personally don't like to play with this deck in slow dredge mode. Just a dredging 5, 6, or maybe 4 cards each turn. We are so much better if we have at least 2 lands. My opponent has Ponder. Shuffles. Okay, my opponent has Wasteland, so... Oh, they will not destroy our land yet? They are just deciding for us, right? They're just choosing our path, yeah. If you draw exactly 5th looting, this is so good. Well, no, right? The right call is just discarding our hand here. Especially because my opponent might have days at this point. So Dredge 5, and let's pass. We had Anger on top. My opponent draws. We already have 2 Bridges, 1 Poxwalkers, and 1 Dredge Return. We are not far away of having something incredible here. But unfortunately, we have only Golgari Thug in our graveyard, which is our worst dredger. My opponent is Brainstorming. And as I said, my opponent had a mulligan to 5. We kept 7. And my opponent is ahead because of Force of Will plus Wasteland. And LED is only good when you have something else going on. Okay, we managed to find Cabal Therapy, another Bridge, and Golgari Grave. We are a single Narcomoeba away of winning this game. Unless my opponent has a way to get rid of our Bridges. Okay, my opponent was kind of floated there. Mishra's Bubble for my opponent. That's a good sign, so no Darcy. This seems to be just a tempo deck. And my opponent has only 2 cards in their hand. What else? Nothing. Okay, my opponent chose to fetch before passing the turn. I'm suspecting of a Force of Negation in the main deck here. And we found our Narcomoeba and 2 extra Poxwalkers, so this might be a win, despite our terrible start. Sometimes that happens. Your opponent has a controlling start, and they control, but your slow dredging gets there. Yeah, my opponent is conceding. We won game 1. Better lucky than good, right? Okay, so for game 2. This seems to be a tempo deck, but blue-red, not blue-black. This is better, but also worse. It's better because we don't need to worry about Doughty Voidwalkers and Barrel Goyfs and things like that. But sometimes your opponent will not have any interaction, any graveyard hate card, but only with counter spells and a clock, they win the game because they are more aggressive than blue-black. Blue-black usually plays with Tamio plus Archish Bowmasters and trying to win the long game, but sometimes you just lose to turn 2 Corey Steelcutter plus a bunch of Lightning Bolt on turn 3 or something like that. Hopefully we'll find Unmask. Unmask is so good. Guys, if you're playing Dredge or want to play Dredge in this metagame, you just need 4 copies of Unmask. And we have Unmask. Great. And we also have Shenanigans. This is not perfect because we don't have a great Dredger here, but I will not mulligan this. This is a keep. My opponent also kept 7. Polluted Delta for my opponent. Cracks it for Volcanic Island. And Grafdigger's Cage. We have an answer, but only for turn 2. Okay, more lands are good. I think I will cast Faithless Looting here. That's why I played Volcanic Island, to play around Daze instead of Cephalic Elysium. Because drawing extra cards is always... Okay, my opponent has Daze, Force of Will, and Pyroblast. We're not afraid of Pyroblast, but my opponent has Wasteland. That means we need to find more red mana. And we did. We did it. So let's discard our Cabal Therapies, I guess. Mana is important this game. This will be harder than expected because my opponent has Wasteland, Daze plus Force of Will. And if they top deck another Wasteland... Oh, and a clock now. Okay, let's draw something good. And it is pretty good. It is pretty good. In spots like this, you want to have something fast to do after you destroy Gravedigger's Cage. And we might need 2 turns to actually destroy that. Yeah, because my opponent now has Force of Will active. And active Force. Dredge Return. Good for the future, but not now. Let's grab our basic mountain here because we need to guarantee these shenanigans for next turn. Oh, my opponent is choosing here. Maybe they will not counter that. Saving Force of Will for our next enabler. We don't have dredgers yet, so this might be a good choice from my opponent. Let's see. They are thinking... Yeah, they chose to let this happen. Better card on top here is Golgari Grave Troll, because then we can sacrifice, discard our hand and sacrifice LED for 2 blue mana and win the game. My opponent didn't shuffle after that Ponder, but they didn't play a land. Okay, they have another Wasteland. That explains. So now we only have 2 mana. We could bring back shenanigans here. This would be good if we have exactly Narcomoeba on top, but the chances of hitting another enabler here, looting or a blue enabler, are so good, so high. So let's draw. Okay, a dredger. So I think we just do it. We could wait a little bit more because Golgari Thug is not the strongest dredger, right? But we only need 1 Narcomoeba to cast Cabal Therapy and take my opponent's forces. Dredge, dredge, come on, Narcomoeba. No Narcomoebas. Okay, my opponent will force whatever I cast here, right? So let's cast Faithless Looting, which is our strongest option here, but they will definitely fire those forces. And now we need to find our Narcomoeba. My opponent has only 2 useless copies of Pyroblast. We have great chances to hit a Narcomoeba here, but we have only 3 turns from now. We'll dredge probably half of our deck. So please, Narcomoeba. No, they are sleeping on the bottom of our deck. We have almost all of our dredgers, the good dredgers there. 3 Grave Trolls, 3 Imps. Is my opponent Brainstorm locked? Okay, we still have chances. We need Narcomoeba. So far, this has been an interesting matchup. It felt like my opponent was pretty much ahead, and then felt like I was ahead. Now it seems like even. I don't know what my opponent had on top with that Brainstorm, but we only need Narcomoeba. Okay, another land from my opponent. It's important to notice that my opponent can destroy their own Delver of Secrets at instant speed. Okay, just that. But my opponent was thinking about that. Okay, just to bury our bridges. But if they do that, that's fine. Oh, they will Brainstorm now? Why? We don't have counter spells. You can cast your Brainstorm at any moment. I'm not playing Blue Dredge. Okay, Narcomoebas now. 2 of them. Great. This is good. We definitely need to cast our first Cabal Therapy here to force some action from my opponent. Since they cast a Brainstorm before this happening, they might have only 1 Pyroblast in their hand instead of 2. Yeah, so they are fighting that Pyroblast. I can still name Pyroblast here, but I think I don't have anything better to name here. We stabilized the board now, so let's name Pyroblast anyways. But I think my opponent has something else. Yeah, just a Force of Will. All right. We don't need to take that force. We can wait to find another bridge from below. We have a Dredge Return dead. So Dragon's Rage Channeler on top. So my opponent has only a set Force of Will in their hand, and this Darcy needs to attack. Let's dredge. Come on, deck. Nothing. We had an Underground Sea on top. I think I'll attack with my Poxwalkers, right? I don't think my opponent will block because they are ahead this game. Yeah. So they are down to 14. And now we will cast Cabal Therapy targeting them, because anything they cast with a Darcy is better. So let's force to discard the Force of Will. And now they are Hellbent. We need another Narcomoeba to cast a Dredge Return. We need another Breach, maybe another Poxwalkers. But we are not favorites to win this game. My opponent will Surveil now. Good choice. They saved this Surveil for the late game. This is turn 7. Now what? My opponent attacks. What if we don't block? I'm not saying lightning bolts. If we don't block, this gives us a chance to find Bridge from below once more. Okay, my opponent's last card was Mishra's Bauble, so they can pick at their top card. Oh, they lacked the card on top of their deck. That's a bad sign. And they want to pick at our top card. So let's dredge 5 and hope for the best. Okay, 2 extra Narcos, but no Bridge and no Poxwalkers. So we have blockers. We need to push some damage here. I think I will attack with both creatures, because my opponent has only 1 card, a new card in their hand they want it. Maybe it is a removal spell, but not for both of my creatures. Let's cast Poxwalkers here. Cabal Therapy, I mean. So we'll bring back both Poxwalkers. So now we have lethal for next turn. And let's see what my opponent... I need to decide here. I could name Brazen Borer, which is a good card for my opponent to have, but also a generic removal spell, or just Force of Will, or just Force of Negation, because it was Brazen Borer. You see, sometimes this happens with me as a player. I picture the card that my opponent probably has, and I just change my mind, picking something else. Okay, now my opponent has a Brazen Borer, so we need to sacrifice our Narcomoeba to this Dredge return. So we'll have a Stinkweed Imp purely as a blocker. This way, I bet my opponent will just bounce my Stinkweed Imp. Oh man, now this is tied again. If I stumbled there. Instead of naming Force of Negation because my opponent had three mana, I should go for the right call. Because Force of Negation... Alright. Let's see. Let's keep playing Magic. My opponent will draw an extra card again. This time they didn't like days. We need to jump block here. And we don't have lethal anymore. Well, we forced my opponent to do that. But now... Oh, there's nothing we can do, right? We already used our Dredge return. My opponent will just cast a second flyer. We don't have another flyer. Yeah, guys, this was on me. I knew my opponent. I mean, I couldn't know for sure that my opponent has Brazen Borer, but I picture Brazen Borer and then changed to Force on that Cabal Therapy, and yeah, Brazen Borer is usually the answer in situations like this. Round 2, we are on the play. I'll keep it. I mean, run 3. I'll keep it because this can play so... This can be so good against my opponent's Wastelands and Forces having 2. I'm sorry guys, I'm also playing a modern tournament. At the same time, I'm double queuing now. And I should probably not do it because I'm getting distracted here. After this round, I'll probably just stick to this tournament. So, Scouting turn. As I was saying, having both Otherworldly Gaze with 2 basic lands guaranteed can put us in a pretty good position. My opponent had a mulligan to 5. We are casting Otherworldly Gaze around Force of Negation, and those are good hits. Let's keep Faithless Looting on top. And now we have an Narcomoeba and a Cabal Therapy in our graveyard. Let's see what my opponent has. Polluted Delta. We played around Force of Negation, and my opponent stopped a little bit. So I think they have a Force. Or Force of Will, or Force of Negation. And they had a mulligan to 5. So let's crack Scouting turn. Since we have 2 good Dredgers, let's try Faithless Looting here, and if my opponent force it, we'll still have Otherworldly Gaze. We could cast a Cabal Therapy here, but we don't know which Force my opponent has, and I prefer to just... Okay, they had Force of Negation, exiting Brainstorm. Brainstorm is such a good card. This might indicate that they don't have that many options in their hand. So we attack with Narcomoeba, and I'll cast my second Otherworldly Gaze on their up now. Okay, great hits again. We can probably put Shenanigans in our graveyard, right? If my opponent has an artifact against us, let's keep both of the other cards on top. If my opponent has something else, they will see Shenanigans and that's it. No problem. We have 2 basics. Okay, my opponent has Darcy and 3 cards in their hand. This is turn 2. My opponent had no other land. That's good news for us. Let's cast Looting here. We are already playing around days. Another Force, Izzet Delver of Secrets. And Darcy triggers. That's so scary. Because now we need... Oh, well, we have 2 remaining Otherworldly Gazes, but hopefully my opponent will not chain Counterspell into Counterspell. We can attack here. I don't intend to block Darcy without a Breach from Below in my graveyard. I'm not sure if I will cast Otherworldly Gaze in my upkeep, or if I'll just have a natural draw here. We can draw one of our 4 LEDs, or any other mana, and then we can cast Looting with Flashback, which is also good. Or just a Stinkweed Imp as a blocker, which is incredibly good against this deck. My opponent casts Mishra's Bubble and mills Mishra's Bubble, so they are looking for lands. Desperately, now they have a Ponder, their last card. They need lands or graveyard hate cards, or both. Oh, they had Gravedigger's Cage on top, but they chose to mill it, because they need lands, yeah. They shuffled their library. Probably they had a Cage, but nothing else, and we have a Shenanigans, so yeah. Cage is not good if you see Shenanigans in your opponent's graveyard. My opponent did hit a land after the shuffle. Now we know that our Otherworldly Gaze will resolve, but let's draw a card. Oh, Cephalic Elysium is excellent. We could crack it, or just cast Faithless Looting and draw 2 more. I think we are ahead now, guys. Let's crack Cephalic Elysium here. This is just guaranteed. We can have Shenanigans, that's fine. Okay, and we have an LED. It's okay to draw 3 and discard 3 cards, because we have so many good enablers Any land or enabler on top would be good, and now we have LED and another Otherworldly Gaze. I think we just go for it because we have 2 Poxwalkers and a Cabal Therapy. And if this resolves, and this will resolve because my opponent has only 1 card in their hand. Oh, is my opponent holding Hydroblast? Just brainstorm, okay. They might have Surgical Extractions because they are looking for something. Okay, Consign to Memory in their graveyard. Is it resolving? Yes. So Dredge 5 and Dredge 4. We have Dredge Return, not great cards to bring back. Maybe a 5/5 or 6/6 Gogar Grave Throw is already good enough to win this game. Let's see my opponent's remaining card. I'll name Ponder here, just a generic cantrip. Or maybe, let's name Brazen Borrower now. Okay, just a Polluted Delta. So the good card is on top of my opponent's library. Let's attack with our Narcomoeba first. We don't have Breach from below yet. So if I reanimate this Grave Throw, my opponent's Darcy is forced to attack. I think I'll do it, guys. This way we'll definitely have lethal in 2 turns. And my opponent is really far from winning this game. We have a 5/5 now. And my 5/5 has Regenerate for a single mana, and we have mana. So my opponent's Darcy attacks. That's fine. My opponent plays that Polluted Delta that we knew about it. Cracking it. Is this something that costs 3 mana? No, just a Survey Land. But they have something good now. Or something that they probably wanted in their hand. They don't want Force of Will at this point of the game. Oh, is it Murktide? Yeah, it's Murk time. It will be huge, right? An 8/8 guaranteed. Guys, suddenly we are almost losing this game. What a match. What a match. We can attack with our Poxwalkers. My opponent will not block. Let's Dredge 5 here. Okay, oh, and we have Cabal Therapy and Bridge. We have 2 Therapies. 3 Therapies. Yeah, now I don't think my opponent can win anymore. Woof. Narcomoeba to save us. Actually, I think I will not attack with Gogar Grave Throw, right? There's no need. My opponent will definitely not block, and we can even cast Otherworldly Gaze to see something else on top of our library. Great hits. I don't think we need any of those, but let's keep a Breakthrough. Why not? It's such a good card. Now let's make some zombies, just to have lethal guaranteed next turn. What can happen here? My opponent can have a second Murktide Regent, so Darcy don't need to attack anymore because my opponent loses Delirium, and then my opponent will have 3 blockers. 1 Murktide blocks Gogar Grave Throw, the other Murktide blocks another Poxwalkers, Darcy blocks another Poxwalkers, and we still have 7 damage. Yeah, so it's over. My opponent doesn't have Orcish Bowmasters, so only 1 extra blocker now, if they have another creature. Oh, my opponent is saying, great games, I mean it. And we have the concession here. We are 4-0, guys. GG's. We are on the play against Amiracle. Is this a control opponent? And we are already locked in the top 8, so we can maybe try this match here as an opportunity to test something about our deck. This is a mulligan. This hand, for example, is this a keep or a mulligan? I'll try to keep it on the play. We can try a turn 2 Breakthrough, turn 3 Breakthrough. This is not a great keep, but let's keep it. Let's talk to my opponent here. I'm leading the standings now. I'm the only player with a 4-0 result, but my opponent has a 3-1 and it's close. I think my opponent also is locked in the top 8. I'm telling him, let's have fun. I think we are both locked in the top 8. I told him, or I told them that I kept a bad hand just for testing purposes. Oh, my opponent wants to know if I'm going to Eternal Weekend. In Italy, yes. Oh, my opponent is also going to Eternal Weekend, but in North America. Tamio is in town and my opponent has Tundra. So this is probably a control deck after all. We'll draw. Oh, we are just having a conversation here. My opponent played in Bologna some years ago before the pandemic. And now I have a tourist visa for United States. So maybe next year I can travel to the North American Eternal Weekend. So Breakthrough with X equals to 1. Do you have a counterspell? I probably... No, I know. They if they are playing control, they have Force of Will, Exiling Consign to Memory in the main deck. So this might be Jeskai or just a straight. My opponent is Amiracle, so it is maybe a control expert. The Snow-Covered Island that Ponder didn't shuffle. Tamio investigates. If we let's draw. Oh, looting is really good here. Looting is really good. Okay, let's play Volcanic Island and cast Faithless Looting. 2 lands, unfortunately. But that's fine. If we resolve this Breakthrough, we can win the game, probably. I don't think my opponent plays Daze, so let's cast Breakthrough with X equals to 1. Come on, Grave Throw. Dredge 6. What? Again? Okay, I'll go up to 15 dredgers on my next tournament, I guess. My deck used to be better trained to chain dredgers, especially on turn 3 with a Golgar Grave Troll. Okay, guys, we have two Cephalicolisms for next turn. My opponent brainstorms. We can probably just win next turn, cracking Cephalicolism twice, and winning with Angry Zombies or Thassa's Oracle, because my opponent will flip Tamio. They have 2 lands and 2 blues. Tamio goes up. Main deck Containment Priest. The things we need to deal with. Main deck Spell Bombs, main deck Containment Priest. Our only hope now is to cast Ox of Agonas, or fighting black mana, but let's try to find Ox this turn. Let's play aggressively. My opponent's playing Control, and Tamio already has 4 loyalty. Dredge, Dredge, and Dredge. No Ox yet. We still have Underground Sea in our deck, so let's see what's on top of our deck. Unfortunately, we will lose our 3 Poxulkers. Cephalic Elysium we can keep it, right? We can keep it and then crack Cephalic Elysium to hit Ox. But if Ox is incredibly deep into our deck, we have no chance, because Tamio is going up. Tamio plus Containment Priest is a terrible combination for us, because even if we create 3 zombies to attack your opponent or Tamio, they will be just 1 choose. We don't have Anger. We don't have Anger or Ox. Let's grab our Cephalic Elysium. We need to tap another Cephalic Elysium so we can have 2 red mana. Containment Priest in the main deck, huh? Okay, now we have Anger. Where is our Ox? Let's dredge. Okay, guys, Ox was on the very bottom of our deck, and now we cannot win anymore because Ox draws 3 cards. Yeah. Underground Sea was next to Ox. Yeah, we must concede. I wasn't expecting Containment Priest. This is not an open deck list tournament. So this makes sense in today's metagame with everyone playing Reanimator, but Containment Priest in the main deck. Okay, my opponent is playing white, so they probably have something else, not only Containment Priest after sideboarding. They might have Surgical Extraction, Fairy Macabre, maybe some artifact. So Unmask is generically good against counter spells and answers. Do you remember Grief? Grief was pretty good in Dredge before being banned. It was pretty good in other decks too, in scam decks. And Grief was slightly better in the builds, the Dredge builds at that time, because we still used to play with Eco-Reads. Now I'm just playing with Poxwalkers because it's just a better card overall. But with Eco-Reads, Grief was Eco-Read food, right? Okay, no lands, Mulligan. With a mountain, this would be so good. This would be a turn 1 win with the right land. Can we keep it? I can keep it and try to top deck a land, or maybe I just put Island back and try to be lucky with Faithless Looting discard in my hand. Yeah. We are just playing to test the deck, playing for fun this round, because we are already locked in the top 8 anyways. So let's see my opponent's secrets here. We could discard Bridge, but I think Bridge is so important in this matchup. Okay, that's actually not that good against us. We need to take Force of Negation, but my opponent has only 1 tapped land. Now this Faithless Looting will resolve. And we want to see more Dredgers and Narcomoeba, please. 1 Narcomoeba, 2 Bridges, 1 Cabal Therapy, great. Only 1 Dredger, but I'll not complain. This could be worse. Considering my opponent's hand, I think I would just... it's between Ponder and Tamio here. Source to Plowshares would be a consideration if we had more creatures, but at this point... Ponder is my opponent's only cantrip, and they kept a hand with a single Surveil land, so we might get lucky here if they have only spells on top. Sometimes this works. They have their Surveil land, but we need much more than that. We already have 2 creatures, so Dredge Return plus Narcomoeba plus Finisher. Not easy task to achieve, but we are slightly ahead. My opponent kept the card on top, so it is probably a land. And then they can cast Philia, Dredge 5, Narcomoeba, and another Cabal Therapy. Alright. Tamio is also pretty good here against us because we have small creatures. Philia can be killed in combat. I'll name Tamio, but Philia is also bad for us because my opponent can... It's another Ponder. My opponent can blink our zombies. But we will attack for 8 next turn. So my opponent needs more than just the dog. Let's see. It's a land. Can attack for 8. My opponent casts Philia, blinks 1 of our zombies. We don't have dredges anymore, unfortunately. This might be enough to win the game unless my opponent has another land on top. But if they have Philia and nothing else on top, they will Ponder and then Swords and we will have 3 zombies, and my opponent might not attack. Okay, they will attack. I'm trying to think positive here. My opponent's deck looks a little bit like their modern counterpart, like with my opponent probably have creatures to blink. Okay, Ponder, and my opponent had the 3rd land, but I thought that my opponent would just smash the Fairy here and bounce another token. This would be a win for them already, but my opponent decided to Ponder first. Oh, Sanctifier and Vac. Okay, we lost. We lost. Yeah, right on time for my opponent here. Yeah, we cannot win anymore, guys. We put our opponent down to 2, and now they can blink and bounce our remaining zombies. Yeah, GG's. Let's concede. Okay, good news is we are locked in the top 8, probably in 2nd or 3rd place after this loss. And let's see, this was a fast game, so let's see who will be our next opponent on top 8. Hey folks, this is the next day, and I'm voicing over here my video, because yesterday was too noisy. My neighbors have a band, and they decided to have a rehearsal at the same time of this tournament, Saturday in the afternoon. So they usually do that. So I kept this hand against my opponent, XXquestion something, a long name. And I was supposed to be on the play here, but me and my opponent didn't pay attention to that rule in the tournament. So that's why I'm only discarding my Grave Troll due to hand size. This is an open deck list top 8, so I know that my opponent is playing Mono Red Stompy. I mean, not Stompy, but actually Initiative. And I know that my opponent has Chalice of the Void, so this is an incredibly hard matchup to win against Chalice on 1 and Chalice on 0, but especially on the draw, and I was supposed to be on the play, so next time let's pay attention. But let's see what I can do here against Chalice. Since I kept a hand with 7 cards with Cephalic Coliseum and Dredgers, I just discarded my Dredger on turn 1, and now my plan is to fetch a basic if my opponent has some Moon effect, or just fetch Volcanic Island here to crack Cephalic Coliseum on next turn. But I can crack Cephalic Coliseum next turn, or I can cast Ox of Agona since I have an Ox. And this is weird. It seems that my opponent is extremely ahead this game, but we are not afraid of Chalice anymore at this point. So even playing slowly here, I remember to just keep calm, breathe, because we probably have the win on turn 3 or maybe turn 4 here. We can take the initiative easily if we find Anger. So let's put more creatures in play. I decided to go to the Ox Road here instead of having Cephalic Coliseum this turn and Ox next turn. And this is because we already have a Dredge return there, plus Cabal Therapy, plus several Dredgers. Cabal Therapy will just create more zombies. We don't have ways to resolve Cabal Therapy because of Chalice, but we don't need to resolve Cabal Therapy anymore. We just need to cast Cabal Therapy, sacrificing Ox, getting some zombies, Poxwalkers, and reanimating Ox to win the game, maybe this turn. I don't remember if I won on turn 3 or turn 4, but if you're playing on the draw against Chalice decks, this is a great strategy, especially if you kept at least 2 lands, especially if you have access to double red or Cephalic Coliseum in your starting hand. So I'm creating more zombies. We don't have Anger yet, and instead of reanimating Ox, I decided to reanimate Satoru, because we can even win with Thassa's Oracle here instead of attacking. And this is turn 3 on the draw against Chalice of the Void on 1. So that's the power of our deck. Sometimes playing Manaless Dredge style also works on the first turns of the game, of course. And now we have Dredge return. We can win in several ways here. We couldn't find Anger yet, but at this point we can just decide how to win this game. It would be easier if we were on the play, but luckily, we managed to win anyways. Remember to always sacrifice Satoru to reanimate Thassa's Oracle at the end, unless you still need to draw some cards to finish the game, because you cannot win with Thassa's Oracle if you don't have just a few cards remaining in your deck. So we won game 1 on the draw. I think I probably did a sideboard with Unmasks and 1 or 2 Shenanigans. Let's see how I did sideboard here. Especially on the draw, again, I know that my opponent will have more answers against me. I think they have Fairy Macabre, so Unmask is important, but sometimes they only keep hands with Shenanigans, with Chalice and some ways to stop you from winning on the first turn. So shenanigans can be important. It feels weird to do a sideboard similarly as I do against tempo decks, but that's the power of unmasking shenanigans in this metagame. Everyone has some graveyard hate through artifacts. If they don't, they might have at least one piece of interaction, like Soul Guide Lantern or something. So having at least one shenanigans can be good, and unmask is of course excellent. Game 2 on the draw is even harder to win compared to on the play, but this is an extremely strong hand that can win on turn 1 if my opponent has only a turn 1 initiative creature. If they have Fairy Macabre or some sort of interaction with our graveyard, this hand will not work because this is an all-in hand. But it can work. We even have a basic island if my opponent has a turn 1 Magus, for example. So let's see. My opponent kept 6 cards. City of Traitors and Chalice again. Luckily we have Breakthrough, so we need to draw an extra land here. We didn't, but we drew Shenanigans. I decided to go to my end step to discard Grave Troll, same style that on game 1, we did on game 1. But it will be harder here if my opponent has something else after this Chalice. My opponent has a Plains and Archon of Emeria. So now we can only cast 1 spell each turn. I decided to Dredge here, and it was our best choice. And now I decided to play my LED before my opponent has another Chalice on 0, like we saw on game 1. I played my Island. And next turn, we can Dredge 5, trying to hit Ox again. Or you can just be lucky and have a natural draw, trying to hit another land to cast these Shenanigans. My opponent plays Plateau and attacks with Archon here. We are not supposed to blocking here because we don't have any bridges and this is not good. My opponent had no spells last turn, so this probably means that they have just another turn 3 play, they need more lands. I remember stopping here for a long time thinking, do I have a natural draw? Should I draw? Should I Dredge 5? I don't remember, let's see what I did. It's weird to voice over your own video when you don't remember exactly what you did. Okay, I decided to be lucky here and draw, and I couldn't draw a land from the top. So now I'll just attack with Necroamoeba. Yeah, I think I kept trying to draw a land here for a couple of turns. My opponent has an Ancient Tomb here and Unlicensed Hearse. Okay, so I'm glad I did this play instead of keep dredging, because my opponent now can exile 2 cards from my graveyard every turn, and hitting a second land to destroy this Unlicensed Hearse is essential. I remember that my opponent has only 1 copy of this card in their 75. So, okay, this is our second land. So we did hit what we needed. My opponent has only 2 remaining cards in their hand. Hopefully just 2 lands, right? You always hope that your opponent don't have enough lands. This Coliseum is not red, but we can crack Coliseum trying to draw 3, discard 3, and finally hitting our red mana. As long as my opponent don't deploy an initiative creature here, we are still fine. We have time to do our thing. My opponent attacks again. I legitimately don't remember. Yeah, my opponent had an initiative creature. I wasn't remembering here if this was an initiative at short time or if my opponent had another interaction with us. Okay, my opponent has the initiative. We can take the initiative back. So this was actually a misplay from my opponent because we have a basic mountain and we need a basic mountain to try to win this game, right? So we will attack with our Necroamoeba to take the initiative and find our basic mountain. Saying that this is a mistake maybe is just a stretch because my opponent doesn't know that we have Shenanigans in our hand, right? But now we have a good play here. We can destroy Unlicensed Hearse and maybe play for a win next turn. What really stops us from winning in a single turn is Archon of Emeria. And in this build, I'm not playing Ashen Rider. If you have Ashen Rider because your local metagame has several show and tell decks, for example, Ashen Rider is especially good in situations like this. You can destroy, you can exile your opponent's creatures, and then proceed to win the game. So if initiative decks and also show and tell decks are prevalent in your local metagame, you can always include Ashen Rider back in your sideboard. Now, of course, we need to cast Shenanigans targeting my opponent's Hearse, and they will probably exile our Poxwalkers in response. We cannot cast anything else this turn. We can try to discard our hand and activate Phallic Coliseum this turn, or maybe in my opponent's turn. And again, Archon of Emeria is preventing our win here, because we need to cast several spells to win, at least to have enough blockers to stop my opponent from winning. And my opponent attacks. Caves of Chaos Adventurer is also an engine to draw extra cards. My opponent found a Fairy Macabre, but they cannot They cannot cast Fairy, right? Because they don't have black mana. The Adventurer doesn't allow you to activate an ability of the exiled card. You can only cast it. And here I think I decided to crack ADD and Cephalic Coliseum, trying to hit some Narcomoebas and Bridges. If we hit at least one Narcomoeba, we can have 1 or 2 zombies for free this turn. And if we hit at least 1 Poxwalkers, we can also bring back Poxwalkers tapped, casting an Otherworldly Gaze. Even if it gets countered because my opponent's Chalice, this is a really good play here. Dredge 6. We found an Otherworldly Gaze, we found 1 Bridge, but unfortunately no Narco and no Poxwalkers. That was pretty bad because we needed at least 1 Narco or 1 Poxwalkers to block this Archon here and have more zombies. This was a way to stabilize this game. Now we need to pass back to my opponent's attack. We'll go down to 7, and we need to create several zombies to block my opponent's creatures next turn because my opponent can trap and drain 5 life. So we need to block Archon, and we need to have at least 6 zombies to block Caves of Chaos Adventurer and 1 extra zombie to block Magus. We have basics. So you can see here how Archon of Emeria is a good Magic the Gathering card. Now everything we hope here is Dredge Return plus 2 extra Narcomoebas, because we can only cast a single spell. So I dredged 6. We found another Narcomoeba and another Breach. That means I can attack, take the initiative, cast Acabal Therapy just to have 3 extra zombies. But this is still lethal in my opponent's favor. We can put 2 +1/+1 counters on our new Narcomoeba. So it can block as a 3/3, it can block Archon. We can create 3 zombies. But we could win this game if my opponent had no Magus of the Moon in the previous turn. Magus is winning the game from my opponent. Archon plus Magus here because we will have now 3 zombies to block Caves of Chaos Adventure. So we could block our opponent's creatures and go to 1 life. We could kill Archon of Emeria and then win the game in the next turn. But things were aligned to my opponent's win. You should not concede in situations like this because your opponent sometimes forget that their creature has trample. Maybe they miss something. So even if you don't have anything to do here, just do your best poker face and wait to see what your opponent will do. And my opponent does the right thing. They attack. And we could cast an Otherworldly Gaze to bring back an extra Narcomoeba, but my opponent has a Chalice of the Void. So I still blocked here, but my opponent will have exactly lethal. And you can see here, I still didn't concede because my opponent could choose Arena instead of Trap, so you never know. But my opponent only needs to click on Trap, yeah, and we will lose the game. Now going to the next game, we'll be on the play. That's huge against this deck because we will not be so weak to a Chalice of the Void. My opponent definitely knows that a turn 1 Chalice will not be that bad against us. This will be our first game on the play. And we could do something different here. We could re-include some of our spells, but I think this is probably fine. Remember, this is open deck lists, and I know that my opponent has Fairy Macabre and 1 Unlicensed and Hers. But I still chose to keep 2 Shenanigans instead of only 1, because Chalice of the Void is also bad against us. And this is a great keep. This is a keep of 4, right? This is not a keep of 5. I decided to keep. If my opponent has a Fairy Macabre, this can backfire. If my opponent has just Unlicensed Hers, Chalice, or a turn 1 initiative creature, this can win. I decided to go slow here, just a Faithless Looting. Oh, and I found exactly Unmask plus black card. I think I will discard Golgargriff Troll and Narcomoeba here, because if my opponent has a Fairy Macabre, we can top deck another land to cast Breakthrough and Otherworldly Gaze to win the game. Yeah, exactly. And now I'll cast Unmask targeting my opponent. And they have a good hand, but also a slow hand. Only Unlicensed and Hers as some sort of interaction. Magus of the Moon is not especially good now, and my opponent can cast it on turn 1, but we can always just crack ADD next turn and resolve Faithless Looting. Now we have some options here. We can try to go fast, just dredging this turn, or we can try to do better on the next turn. I decided to wait 1 turn here. This will backfire if my opponent draws exactly Fairy Macabre, but we had some games in this tournament in situations where we couldn't chain dredgers because our deck failed to do such a thing. So I decided to just wait 1 more turn here. My opponent played Ancient Tomb, and they decided to wait, probably because they want to cast Caves of Chaos Adventure on turn 2. But now we have Narcomoeba, Cabal Therapy, Bridge, so I decided to crack LED and cast our Faithless Looting, trying to maybe win the game faster this time. Dredge 12, and from here we cannot win the game immediately, but we have one Cabal Therapy, one Poxwalkers, and two Bridges. So we have several creatures here. At this point, we are not afraid of Caves of Chaos Adventure. We have so many creatures to take the initiative and stay with the initiative. So we don't care about Magus. So here I'm looking at Archon of Emeria, and I definitely took that from my opponent's hand. Let's see. I had a moment here to think, but I think I took the Archon, right? It's the right choice. Caves of Chaos Adventure gives my opponent a basic land as soon as it enters the battlefield, but Archon of Emeria is what will stop us from winning the game next turn. And my opponent has a 4/4 Lingas. Not a great card against us if we already have several creatures like here. And here I took a moment to see here and have some immediate value from my Dredge return. Because against this opponent, I decided that if we can put several creatures in play, we'll probably just win the game. Having a 7/7 that regenerates, we'll probably just win the game by itself. Not by itself, because we also have 5 2/2 zombies and 1 Poxwalkers. And my opponent conceded. Yeah, it was pretty easy to see that we would have the win here, especially because my opponent has an Ancient Tomb. So let's go to the top 4. Alright guys, we did it, and this is the top 4. I'm voicing over, as I explained in the previous matchup. I am playing this listening to a rock and roll rehearsal, so it's difficult to pay attention to everything. And this is just a tempting hand, right? We have so much action, but we are extremely weak to Force of Will plus Wasteland. Hands like this are so tempting that I usually keep them, but it's definitely debatable here if we should keep or not. I will keep it. I mean, I kept it yesterday. And guys, buckle up, grab your popcorn, because this matchup is awesome, but also long and extremely educational. So I'll start with Faithless Looting, of course. This is definitely the recommended matchup of this tournament. If my opponent has a Force of Will, exciting Tamio. If you have time to watch it, you definitely learn a lot here. I believe I also do some mistakes here and there, so we can learn a lot of just watching this matchup. And my opponent indeed had Force of Will and Wasteland. And guys, at this point of the tournament, we are playing against each other with open deck lists. And I'm having a rematch against kirdiekirdie. This was my first opponent in this tournament, if you remember that. We don't have any lands. I need to pass back to my opponent on turn 3. And if you remember, we saw 2 Nihil Spellbomb in the main deck of my opponent's deck. But now I can see that my opponent has actually 3 main deck Nihil Spellbombs. And this is so scary. My opponent had Force of Will plus Wasteland, but no Spellbomb yet. And we have no lands. So how can we win this? And this matchup is definitely important, because going to the finals, I'll have the opportunity to win the best prize of this tournament, which is the entry ticket for the Eternal Weekend. My opponent finally found a Spellbomb. So how can we win this? Can we? I will just discard a Dredger due to hand size. And I chose Stinkwind Imp instead of Golgari Grave Troll, because at some point my opponent will just crack that Spellbomb. And then we maybe have something good to do. The way we can win here is if my opponent is holding just counter spells and lands and wastelands and maybe removal spells. And then we can maybe top deck a basic land or 2 lands in a row or LED. And my opponent needs to feel forced to crack that Spellbomb. Everything needs to happen in the next 3 turns. And if you play Tempo against Dredge, this is usually what you want to see, right? From your side of the table. Oh, my opponent will crack Spellbomb immediately. This is probably happening because my opponent felt that they are controlling the game enough. And maybe they already have a second Spellbomb, or they want to put an extra card there, they want to draw something. So I didn't need to do much. I only discarded due to hand size because I have no lands. And my opponent passed the turn without playing another land. We'll just repeat here. We have nothing else to do. So I'll just discard this Golgari Grave Troll, but this is just a sad moment for me, because inside I'm feeling that my opponent has everything they need to win this game. And inside, okay, my opponent has Orcish Bowmasters. I'm also thinking, you're such a stupid player. Why you kept that hand with no Dredgers and a single land, right? Of course, that hand was a trap. All right. My opponent has Tamio, Orcish Bowmasters, Wasteland ready there, and my opponent will flip Tamio. Can we win this game? What do you think? I would say that we have maybe 1% of chances of winning this game. My opponent has only 3 cards in their hand, maybe nothing that good. They didn't play a fetch land here, so maybe they are brainstorm locked and both cards are not good. Okay, another Archish Bowmaster. So the clock is ticking in my opponent's favor. They have a blocker, Tamio has 4 loyalty. What to do, what to do? We have 2 options here. Try to draw a land or just dredge 6. I dredged 6 and we had a land on top. Would be really good. Now I have an Archamoeba and a Poxwalkers there. And I'll just discard my Grave Throw again, keeping this gameplay manaless dredge style. Every time you, as a dredge player, live moments like this with a perfect hand but without mana, and you think, okay, maybe I can just top deck mana. We have something like 20% chances of drawing mana or IDD here. But your opponent at this point, my opponent is shuffling after that Ponder. So it always gives you hope, right? Maybe my opponent has only Fatal Pushes and removal spells, but not Counterspell, not Force of Will, not even Daze. That might happen. My opponent even returned Ponder to their hand after their turn. This is definitely a tough spot. My opponent now has another Goyf. It's a small one, just a 2/3. Here I'm thinking if I try a top deck, but I decided that it's probably too late. My opponent probably has something. My opponent doesn't have lethal here. We still have a single turn, and this turn need to be incredible. Let me put my glasses again. Tamio went up, and my opponent is attacking, holding 3 cards, representing Force of Will mana. I dredge again without much hope, and that's it. We lost game 1, and this was fast. Now, going to game 2, we need so much. A combination of luck and skill, and better hands, of course, to try to win this. We'll include masks and shenanigans. If my opponent had a single spell bomb, maybe only 2, we could consider not including shenanigans, because usually your opponent will do as our opponent here did, cash the spell bomb as soon as possible. But since my opponent has 3 spell bombs guaranteed, shenanigans is actually important. Sometimes your opponent just starts with a spell bomb on turn 1 and a slow gameplay, and you can cast shenanigans on turn 2, force your opponent to cast a counter spell, then try again next turn. And sometimes your opponents will have 2 Grave Hate artifacts early in the game. We are on the play, and having Unmask on our side now is crucial. If you don't have Unmask in your collection yet and you want to play Dredge, at today's economy, you need a playset of Unmask for sure. And we're back to play our second game. And this is a good hand, but we don't have any Dredgers. So I decided to mulligan. Yeah, that's right. And this is slightly better because we have Unmask on our side, but if my opponent has 2 counterspells, this can be a trap. At least we have Dredgers this time. So I decided to keep this. And this is just to show you the power of Unmask. I decided to keep Ox of Agonas here because he is our best target for our Dredge return if we find one. So Unmask my opponent. My opponent kept 7 cards. And my opponent had a Force of Will, but this is not that strong, right? Only 1 land. So if we found a couple of Therapies here, we might force my opponent to discard their best cards. So Dredge 6. 2 Narcos are great. Dredge 4. And we couldn't find a Therapy here, but we have Dredge Return and Ox waiting for us. So we need a single Poxwalkers or Cabal Therapy, maybe a second Bridge from below. My opponent has no counter spells now. That blue Elemental Blast will not be enough to win the game. So my opponent played Polluted Delta and thought for a long time here, probably considering their options. Surveillant, Tamio, holding blue Elemental Blast, holding Consign to Memory. And then my opponent decided to pass the turn back to me. We'll definitely Dredge 6 here. And we found the Cabal Therapy. Since we don't have Anger, we will just attack with ordinary Archamoebas first. And now it's pretty tempting because we definitely want to see my opponent's hand. And I know if I cast my single Cabal Therapy here, I will not have that much value. I will just transform one Archamoeba into a zombie. But I will force my opponent to cash that Brainstorm probably, because I think they will not let me to discard Brainstorm or Tamio here. So I'm doing that just to force my opponent into a bad decision, because if I do nothing, my opponent will just surveil and have maximum value from their single land. This is something that I considered yesterday, for sure. And now my opponent has an Underground Sea, and as expected, will cast Brainstorm to hide their goodies. I believe my Cabal Therapy will resolve, so what to name here? This is something that I need to take that moment here as a player, while my opponent is choosing what to do with that brainstorm. What will be my next play next turn? I definitely want to find another creature to cast Dread Return and bring back Ox of Agonas. Considering what my opponent has, Kaito, super slow card at this moment of the game. Tamio probably is hidden, so I decided to name Consign to Memory, which is a great card against Ox of Agonas. And my opponent still had a Consign to Memory there. And they hit Tamio as expected, so it was a win for us. We took the best card of my opponent's hand after Tamio. My opponent has a Wasteland, but Wasteland is not that good. So I'm expecting my opponent to play Tamio this turn and the Wasteland. They might also consider just hold the blue Elemental Blast for something, but we are not casting spells, red spells, right? And they don't need to worry about Ox of Agonas to destroy an Ox, I mean. So they played Tamio. And now it's our turn, and we know exactly what our opponent has in their hand. So we need Cabal Therapy to take that Force of Negation. We have a Cabal Therapy, but again, no third creature to put in play. I'm not scared of my opponent's Kaito, Blue Elemental Blast, or Nethergoyf, so I'll just attack here to push 1 damage. And I decided to cast Cabal Therapy here, but then I decided, no, this is not a good idea. I had my moment here considering my choices. This Cabal Therapy is extremely important for our strategy as soon as we have a second Breach from Below or a Poxwalkers in our graveyard. We need to resolve that Dread Return, so I decided to not cast Cabal Therapy. This is counterintuitive, but sometimes it's just the right thing to do. My opponent Tamio's attack and cashes that Clue token. So they need a land. They found one. So they can cast Nethergoyf. And that's exactly what is happening. Now we know almost everything my opponent has in their hand. So please, Dredge. And we found Poxwalkers and Narcomoeba. That's huge. Because now we can cast Cabal Therapy. We can attack first, of course, with our Narcomoeba just to deal 1 point of damage. And then we can sacrifice it, take my opponent's Force of Negation, and resolve Dread Return to maybe secure or win on game 2. Let's see. This is exciting for me because I actually don't remember what I will see here. My opponent has 1 unknown card in their hand. Is it a second force? I don't remember. My opponent have the option here to yay, and this is exactly what my opponent is doing. My opponent is afraid that I will take their Kaito, but no, what I really needed is to take Force of Negation. So I have my 2 for 1. Thank you, opponent. And now I will resolve my Dread Return to bring back Ox of Agonas. And we'll probably hit at least 1 extra Cabal Therapy now, and we can take that Kaito and maybe Blue Elemental Blast from my opponent's hand. So Dredge 6 again. We have 2 Therapies there, yeah. And Dredge 6 again. After Dredge 18 cards, we have another Poxwalkers, another Narcomoeba, and 2 extra Therapies. Just 1 Breach, but that's okay. We have the control of this game. 2 Death Touch creatures. My opponent's Tamio is not flipping anytime soon, unless my opponent top decks. So I'll just force them to discard Kaito and the Blue Elemental Blast. This way we'll have our 4/2 Ox, and my opponent will have 1 less spell in their hand in case they find a Brainstorm or something. And now my opponent will be Hellbent, and we have Lethal on board for the next turn. My opponent probably cannot attack anymore unless they have a huge top deck. My opponent did nothing. They had their draw for the turn, and they decided to attack with Tamio. Since my opponent might have a Kaito, I will just block with Narcomoeba. They played a second Wasteland and drew a card, and they found Brainstorm. This is pretty important for my opponent because now Tamio will flip, and Tamio going up will hold the ground for a single turn here. And my opponent found a Pounder. Is it possible to lose this game? And this is why this is a recommended matchup, because it was like a tennis matchup. The ball sometimes is with me, sometimes with my opponent, and we both had great chances to win here and there. Now I'm doing some math here. Should I attack Tamio? Should I attack my opponent? I have only 9 cards in my deck, remaining in my deck. And I don't want that many cards now, right? We can find some remaining Breach from Below maybe, but we already used all of our Cabal Therapies in Dread Return. Our 2 Poxwalkers are in play. So I decided to Dredge 4. And I found my Breach from Below. And now I decided to attack. If I remember here, I will ignore Tamio and just attack my opponent, leaving Narcomoeba on defense. Since 1 point of damage will not happen here, Tamio will shrink my opponent's my creatures. And yeah, I decided to attack my opponent, except for Narcomoeba. But all of my creatures are attacking now. And my opponent needs to block one of my bigger creatures here. They decided to block Poxwalkers, so our bridges will get exiled. But I will still have 2 zombies for my trouble. And it's my opponent's turn. They drew a card. and they passed back to us. So we are probably free to just win here. I had a natural draw, scouting turn. I'll play it, why not? And attack for lethal. And now the match is tied, and we are going for game 3. Should we change something in our sideboard, or considering what we saw this game? This will be the most important game in the whole tournament. This will define who will go to the final round. And sometimes I debate with myself here if I want to include Anger against Wasteland decks. Usually it's not the right call when you want to include Unmask and Shenanigans. Anger would be the next card to include back in our deck. But I decided to submit the same 60 cards again. And now the game starts, and what we see here? We see a mulligan to 4 immediately. We don't need bridges in our starting hand, we don't need a combi in our starting hand, but having access to 2 lands and Faithless Looting in our best dredger is fine. Not exciting, not good. We especially don't want to keep hands with Narcomoeba. Sometimes I see new dredge players saying, oh, lands, looting, and grave troll, this is a keep. No guys, this is not. Especially when your game values so much like this. This is a mulligan. Compare the previous hand with this hand, for example. We are Wasteland proof. We have Shenanigans as an answer to a possible spell bomb. We have Unmask. The worst card here is Otherworldly Gaze, and that's because we don't have access to blue mana. But this is a snap keep for us. Not perfect. We would like to draw, here we are on the draw, so we would like to draw another black card here to pitch to Unmask. This way we can even win on turn 1. But guys, spoiler alert, this will not be an easy game. So I kept this hand, Otherworldly Gaze to the bottom. My opponent also kept 6 cards. They started with a basic island and Spellbomb, as predicted. So now we will draw Faithless Looting. My opponent still has 4 cards in their hands, so if they have Force of Will, testing their hand with Lion's Eye Diamond is especially good, because my opponent will probably counter that if they have Force. If we just want to take the Force of my opponent's hand, we could go with Unmask. But I chose the ADD route here, because if my opponent don't want to waste their Force of Will here, we can still grab it with Unmask. And maybe my opponent doesn't have anything else. Yeah, my opponent kept a hand with a single island and 2 brainstorms. So brainstorm is incredibly important here to my opponent. I chose to take one of my opponent's brainstorm. And now I'll cast Faithless Looting because we can even discard Shenanigans if we draw 2 good cards. We are not attached to Shenanigans here. We don't need to hide information. My opponent doesn't have other ways to... My opponent is not playing Surgical Extraction, for example. So we can show Shenanigans to my opponent. That's fine. And now we have access to our second mana source. And my opponent draws. This was one of the most exciting games that I ever played in Magic the Gathering. The context, of course, says much, but you might feel... My opponent draw an excellent card, a Ponder. You might feel that we are ahead because we have Shenanigans, we have access to double mana, but remember, our opponent plays 3 spell bombs in their main deck, and we have only 2 Shenanigans. My opponent didn't shuffle that Ponder, and I will grab Shenanigans back. We had another land on top. I'll grab my basic island, and I will target spell bomb with these Shenanigans. My opponent, this way, my opponent will not have value from the spell bomb, but they have days. And we don't want to discard our hand just to resolve our Shenanigans. This was my opponent's first counterspell this game. They replayed the basic island. They still have Brainstorm. They didn't shuffle last turn, so they have something good on top. We'll try again, right? So Shenanigans again. We had the Cephalic Coliseum on top. That would be a good draw. We don't have good dredgers yet, and now we'll try to destroy Spellbomb for the second time. My opponent casts Brainstorm in response. We know they have Archishable Masters consigned to memory, but we don't know anything else. And my opponent has a second daze. So my opponent is casting Fog, right? 2 turns in a row. Fog, Fog. They replay the same basic island. And now we'll try for the 3rd time. Maybe the 3rd time is the charm. Let's try again. And now it happens. My opponent is exiling our graveyard. We are just losing Faithless Looting with Flashback and Poxwalkers. So this is a great exchange for us. We have a looting in our hand. We have an LED and 2 lands. So we have 4 useful cards, and we can grab Shenanigans back if you want to. My opponent has a basic Swamp and passes. So they will probably cast Archishable Masters now. We will draw, Reach from Below. I decided to pass here because... Or maybe not, I'm not sure. No, I think I'll cast Faithless Looting, yeah. It's fine if my opponent casts Archishable Masters. I just want to draw 2 more cards. I believe if this Faithless Looting resolves, we are favored to win this game. I don't mind to have a shock targeting myself here. I could dredge 1 here, and I found a Grave Troll on top, so it will take only 1 damage. I decided to not reveal that I have a Bridge from below in my hand. This way our bridge will survive. And now I will take this opportunity. My opponent is tapped, and since our Faithless Looting resolved, it seems obvious that my opponent doesn't have a counterspell. So dredge 6 and dredge 6 again. We have Cabal Therapy and 2 bridges. So let's take that consigned to memory, right? That we know about. 2 bridges, triggering, 1 Poxwalkers. We get some Zombos, and I name consigned to memory. If we had more information, we could name something else instead. Okay, my opponent has a second Orcish Bowmasters and Kaito. We are not afraid of Kaito this turn because we have blockers. I don't want to block a creature here because I want to save my bridges for the future. I don't want to let my opponent kill one of their creatures. On the other hand, my opponent can do it at any moment with their second Orcish Bowmasters. They can just cast Orcish Bowmasters and destroying one of the orcs at instant speed. And this is a reason to not block, because if I block here, I will lose my zombies, and my opponent will also exile our bridges. If I don't block, at least I will preserve my zombies here. And we want to keep our zombies around. This way we will force my opponent to destroy 1 orc, and we will not lose zombies. Maybe Poxwalkers if my opponent destroy Poxwalkers here. I could block Orcish Bowmasters, but we are not afraid of Bowmasters triggers, and we have an Otherworldly Gaze waiting for us for next turn. So my opponent decided to wait here to kill the zombie, the tapped orc, I mean, and have a blocker. All right. Now we'll dredge 6. We know about Kaito on my opponent's hand, and now I have another Narcomoeba. Let's cast Orcish Bowmasters. I'm sorry, Otherworldly Gaze. And this is beautiful, right? We can put Ox and Otherworldly Gaze in our graveyard and keep LED on top. This way you can cast Ox of Agonas next turn. Hopefully everything will happen in our favor here. So I will not attack here. I mean, we can attack, right? Because of only 1 Orcish Bowmasters. I don't think my opponent will want to block, but we cannot attack with everyone because my opponent has a Kaito. And I want to guarantee that I can block every creature next turn. We can block the Orc Arm Token with Poxwalkers. We can block Orcish Bowmasters with our zombie. This way I don't think my opponent will attack. If we attack with more than 1 creature, my opponent might draw a removal spell and attack to put Kaito in play. And my opponent found a Barrowgoyf. That's scary at this point of the game, but it's also good because we know that our Ox of Agonas will resolve. So we just need to draw our LED. But having a giant lifelinker here is good for our opponent because we don't have the combo anymore. And we don't have 2 bridges anymore. So how can we actually push damage here if my opponent has a giant lifelinker? This is not easy. So we need to play carefully without a single mistake from now on. We can go really deep into our deck, but we don't play Thassa's Oracle on game 3. So at least we are not playing now. So we need to win against a Barrowgoyf. We need to be patient and do right choices. So let's dredge, dredge, and dredge. We found our last bridge, and 2 Narcos, and 2 Therapies, and dredge return. Since we have almost everything we need, we'll just cast Otherworldly Gaze to see what else we have. We found our last Cabal Therapy. Let's keep the other cards on top. We don't need to dredge deep here. We have 4 cards in our deck, and now we have 4 turns to win this game, and we need to play carefully. So let's start by casting Cabal Therapy, sacrificing Poxwalkers here. Poxwalkers enters the battlefield again, and 1 extra zombie for us. And this is the moment to have maximum value of your graveyard because our opponent can always top deck a spell bomb. So you want to take this turn to take the maximum advantage of your goodies. Even if my opponent is Hellbent, I will definitely cast my 2 remaining Cabal Therapies and Dread Return now, just to flood the board with creatures, and then we can start attacking with our Narcomoebas, maybe our Poxwalkers. We can think how to win this game after creating more and more zombies here. My opponent's Barrowgoyf is a 7/8 Death Touch and Lifelink. It will never connect to us, probably, because we have so many creatures, but my opponent is still on a healthy 18 life. It's a little bit like playing against the energy decks that now also see play in Legacy. Sometimes your opponent just gains tons of life, and if you are not playing Thassa's Oracle anymore, you need to do math, because your opponent will attack, they will try to gain some life. So I'm reanimating my Grave Troll for full value. It's an 11/11 with regeneration, so it can block Barrowgoyf profitably, and it also can attack. Still, my opponent can top deck good cards here. Cards like Brazen Borrower, for example, to bounce our Grave Troll at instant speed. So I decided to attack with my Narcomoeba here. Every point of damage counts. And I don't think my opponent will attack with Barrowgoyf, because if they attack, we'll just win the game in a backswing. So I don't think my opponent can attack here unless they draw something really good. A Nethergoth. Nethergoth is not that scary. For us, at this point of the game, it's just a giant wall. And my opponent passes back. We will have a natural draw here. And now it's time to push some damage, but we also need to think if something goes wrong next turn. We need to think in advance. Do we attack with everyone or just our large creatures and wait one extra turn? If we attack with everyone here, my opponent might block in a way that Barrowgoyf still lives, and then they can attack us and maybe draw something good. So I decided to be patient here and still keep several zombies to block and my Ox of Gunners. I don't think my opponent will block with Barrowgoyf here, and if Poxwalkers die, we can reanimate it with our flashback spell. And this is why having 2 basics is so good in our dredge decks in Legacy. I still remember when I first introduced Otherworldly Gaze to the format. Everyone was so skeptical, and it worked. Otherworldly Gaze adds to our deck control feature. You can control the top of our deck to have great draws when you need them. And then Poxwalkers was printed, and it was the cherry on top. My opponent fought for a long time here and finally decided to block our Golgari Griff Troll with their Orc Army token. We are fine with this jump block here, and we lose our last bridge from below, but we don't need them anymore. We don't have ways to trigger bridge anymore. My opponent is down to 13 and we pass the turn. My opponent is going to the combat, and they decided to attack with Barrowgoyf, which might seem a little confusing here. So for a moment I thought here maybe I can just jump block with a zombie token, or maybe I can put several zombies and everyone will die. I could put Ox of Agonas. When playing online, I do this just to think, right? I'm not considering this block yet. I'm just doing math. My opponent's Barrowgoyf has 7 thoughtness. So what we need to do here? It was a 7-8, but since our bridge from below was exiled, now it's shrinked back to a 6-7. So good for us to lose bridge. And I thought, well, let's kill Barrowgoyf, right? Let's not worry about this anymore. But then I just realized, well, we do not need to do that. Our opponent can gain 6 life here, going back to 19, but then we just have lethal on board. My opponent needs to block Grave Troll and Ox of Agonas, and we have 18 damage. Maybe we don't have lethal, but we have almost lethal, so we can still keep pushing damage. And now I saw that my remaining 3 cards on our deck is Breakthrough, Narcomoeba, and Stink with Imp. Only Narcomoeba is castable here, so I'll keep Narcomoeba on top. I'll not surveil anything. And we need to push some damage this turn. So I'll draw. Again, I don't want to attack and allow my opponent to connect with Barrowgoyf. They have 1 card in their hand. It could be a Brazen Borrower or something. Then I decided to attack with all creatures. And that's because I have an Narcomoeba. So if my opponent can bounce something here, if my opponent can destroy some creature in instant speed, since we have only 2 cards in our graveyard, I decided, well, that's the time to be aggressive. And like, show me what you have in your hand if you have something. And at the end, my opponent has nothing. So my opponent is down to 1. They cannot crack a single fetch land anymore. And I did cast my Narcomoeba. This way I'm telling to my opponent, well, show me. If you can win this game, show me now. And my opponent attacks with Barrowgoyf. They don't have a removal for our Narcomoeba, so we can jump block here again. My opponent is back to 7. We have more than lethal on board. Even if my opponent can play 3 extra blockers, we can still easily win with our zombie tokens. We draw an useless card, and we attack for lethal. Here I am pretty confident that we have the win. My opponent is blocking Grave Troll, and said GG. And I told them back, such an intense match, because it was an intense match. And we won with a single card left in our deck. And then we are going to the finals. Maybe we can win our entry or ticket to the next Eternal Weekend. Let's go. And this is the final match, guys. I am paired against Amiracle again. And we took some minutes before starting this gameplay here, just to talk a little bit. We decided to split the prize because the prize between the first and the second place, both prizes were pretty similar. And Andreas was here with us, Iko Bahonen himself. And he, reading here again, our chat, and he announced that we both had already secured our tickets to Eternal Weekend, because my opponent will play in the North American Eternal Weekend and I will play the European tournament. So we both have or tickets. Now we are just playing, and since we decided to split the prize, we are just playing not for fun because we are competitive players, but we are just playing to test our decks. And I have a pretty good starting hand. And since now we have open deck lists, I know that my opponent is playing with 2 Containment Priest in the main deck, which is wild, right? So if we ever have the chance to have a Cabal Therapy this first turn, since my spells are resolving, my opponent kept a 7-card hand without counter spells, so that means they probably have a Containment Priest, right? So let's check my opponent's hand, and I will name Containment Priest here for sure. Yeah, and my opponent had a Force of Will and Containment Priest, but no Blue Peach. And now I'm feeling favored to win this, but unfortunately, our dredgers were not so good. We have more Cabal Therapies there, we have 1 Breach, we have Ox of Agonas, but we need Poxwalkers, we need something here. We have only Dredge 4. I could even try to be lucky and have a top deck here. The top deck was a breakthrough, that would be awesome. But we are still slow dredging. Let's attack with our zombie token. We know that my opponent has 1 unknown card in their hand, 1 force and 3 remaining lands, including Caracas. Caracas is an interesting one here, because since we have 1 legendary creature in our deck, Satoru the Infiltrator, against white decks, remember to not reanimate Satoru if they have white mana available or a Caracas in play, because you'll try to combo with Satoru and your opponent has an answer. So it's better to, oh, you see here, I need to cast a Cabal Therapy targeting myself just to put a Dredger back in my graveyard, because we had only Stink with Imp and Golgari Thug on the top 26 cards. So we had a good start, but unfortunately not enough Dredgers. My opponent accepted our Cabal Therapy, no counters. Now we have 2 zombies. We know that my opponent has Philia, right? And so they are playing high mana cost cards, but nothing yet. My opponent is already down to 14. But now they have a Teferi, and Teferi can just bounce 1 token, and we can kill Teferi on the next turn. We deeply need a Poxwalkers here to try to win the game. And my opponent has also Source of Plowshares. So now we are losing the game to our opponent's control cards. We did hit Poxwalkers, but now we need another Narcomoeba. And this is a hard spot for our deck, because if you don't have the win fast, you definitely need 2 lands to get to the late game. Of course, and we had some wins here on this tournament. You could watch here on the previous matches when we managed to win even with the late game, even with a single lens or without lens. But it is so much easier if you have access to Otherworldly Gaze with Flashback, because then you can top deck something good or simply surveil 3 extra cards every turn. And now we need to find our remaining Narcos before my opponent finds something. Luckily, it seems that my opponent doesn't have a clock, so an Narcomoeba isn't counterable, so we are good. But we know that my opponent has instant removal, so we are not afraid of Force of Will at this point. We are afraid of other Source of Plowshares or maybe Consign to Memory, things like that. My opponent has a Quantum Riddler without Ephemerate, and we couldn't hit our Narco. We have 11 cards remaining in our deck, and we still have 2 Narcomoebas to find. My opponent's Teferi goes up. They have Force of Will and 4 unknown cards in their hand, and now we will find Narcomoebas. No. No Narcos. Or oh, actually you have only 1 Narco left in our deck, right? Because my opponent... Oh no, I'm sorry, you have 2. You have 2. My opponent bounced a zombie, not a Narco, and exiled the other zombie. So I would dredge 6 and go... My deck will be Hellbent without any cards left, because I know that we can win with Thassa's Oracle if 1 single Narco enters the battlefield this turn. My opponent thinks for a moment and casts Consign to Memory and GG. This is turn 9. And this game could be over 3, 4, probably 5 turns earlier if we had access to 2 lands. This is why I'm playing 14 lands instead of the traditional 13 lands of older dredge builds, because casting Otherworldly Gaze is crucial in some games. We know that we are unfavored to win here, because now that we have access to the full deck list of our opponents, I'll put here on the screen so you can see my opponent's deck list. My opponent has a little bit of everything: Rest in Peace, and several other bad cards for us. Containment Priest, Sanctifier, and Vec. So, but no artifacts. So we don't need shenanigans against my opponent. We need Unmask, and we need to be fast before they can find one of their hard lock pieces. It's not good to include, in case you're wondering, it's not good to include bounce spells for Rest in Peace, because when Rest in Peace hits, you're probably already losing, and your opponent playing control will have a counter spell probably for your bounce spell. buying just one turn to do your thing before your opponent plays their rest in peace again. It's not a good thing. So best thing is discard your opponent's good cards and be fast after that. But not everyone is playing rest in peace these days. Usually they play other stuff. So let's mulligan. This is an interesting hand. Did I keep here? I think I kept this hand. I'm not sure. Let's see. I'll explain why I did it, if I did it. I don't remember. My opponent kept 7 again. I decided to keep here because my thought was, we need lands. This time we have them. We have access to 2 lands here. And we can force my opponent to discard their best card. And this time is Sanctifier and Vec. My opponent kept a super slow hand with removal and 1 hard lock piece against us. But we can win here if we draw anything. And on turn 2, with access to 2 lands, if my opponent don't find nothing and I find nothing, I will just crack a DD to put Sync with Imp in our graveyard. We found a Cabal Therapy, which is incredibly good here, and we have 2 options. I can cast Cabal Therapy targeting myself, or cast a Cabal Therapy targeting my opponent and wait 1 extra turn. And I think I decided to do exactly that. Let's see. Because my opponent has 2 Swords to Plowshares that can be incredibly good against us in slow-paced games like this. So yeah, I decided to take both swords here. My opponent found another land. We'll pass a turn. And now I have so many good draws. I don't think I cracked LED here just to discard Sync with Imp. I think I had another draw after that. Because I have so many good draws here. Any enabler, any land, any LED. More than half of our deck would be a good draw. But oh yeah, but my opponent has this Wrath of the Skies. So it will destroy our LEDs, so I am forced to discard my hand. Yeah, that's right. So I remember having this thought that while not crack LED yet, but my opponent forced me to do so. So, okay. And my opponent has 2 basic planes. So they cannot cast Consign to Memory and Dress Down unless they have another land in their hand. They needed 2 white mana to do that. And now we have all of the colors of our mana. We have Dredgers. Since now we have access to Underground Sea, we can even cast Golgari Thug if we need to. And I think this will be important in this game. My opponent passed back, which is huge. So we are ahead. And we have another Poxwalkers there. So if this Golgari Thug resolves, I can take 1 good card from my opponent's hand, and I will have 2 Poxwalkers and 1 2/2 zombie. And my opponent has only those 2 sad snow-covered planes. My opponent found a Force of Will, exiling Dress Down. They still have access to Consign to Memory and an unknown card. We can try the same thing next turn. So this is just delaying our good play for a single turn. My opponent passed back without doing much, and we will grab Golgari Thug again. And now we even found another Cabal Therapy, so we can do that twice to force my opponent to discard Consign to Memory and some other stuff. In situations like this, remember to order your triggers properly, because you can target Poxwalkers with a Golgari Thug and then put the other triggers above that, so your Thug will not put Poxwalkers on top and you have full value from your spells. I named Consign to Memory here, and my opponent had Force of Negation and Dress Down. So now we can take that Dress Down, right? I don't think I took Force of Negation here because everything we want to avoid here is letting my opponent having card advantage here. We are so good to win this game, even if my opponent finds something. They need blue mana. They need so much. My opponent draws a card. And they found a Sword to Plowshares. Now it's our turn again. And this time I decided to dredge 5. We don't need to cast Thug to win this game anymore. We found a Golgari Griff Troll as our last card and 2 Narcomoebas. As you can probably anticipate, we are winning this game, but my opponent is not conceding. This is a control deck, and they know, yeah, they found a Containment Priest. But unfortunately, too late for the party, because now we can attack for 9, and my opponent still has no blue mana. That's why I decided to grab a Golgari Thug instead, just to push some extra damage. We have lethal next turn. My opponent cannot crack a single fetch land if they don't block here. They decided to let this happen, so my opponent is down to 1. And we'll just pass here, and my opponent concedes. Yeah. So the match is tied. We managed to win against Sanctifier and Vec, multiple counter spells, Source of Plowshares, and a Containment Priest. This is an extremely hard matchup for us. Usually we are favored against control decks, but this is a control deck suited to win against Graveyard. So, not sure if I did something different here for game 3. I think I submitted exactly the same deck with Unmask. Let's see. I think I considered Anger because of my opponent's Planeswalkers, but at the end I decided to let this happen. Because my opponent kept Wrath of the Skies against us. Some opponents will not keep that card against us, and my opponent decided to keep that card. And against us, that card can be good if we go for a line with several zombies, but no many creatures, because my opponent can destroy our zombies and we have no extra value. So we kept this 6. This is a hand that can win on turn 1 if my opponent has no counter spells. And if they have a counter spell for LED, we can try to find something else with Otherworldly Gaze. My opponent kept 7 cards, and they had a Consign to Memory as their first counter spell. I decided to cast this Otherworldly Gaze immediately, and it paid off, so my opponent has no Force of Will or Force of Negation, probably. And both cards here are good on top. I decided to keep LED on top, because if LED resolves, we can win the game on turn 2. My opponent had a counter spell for our first LED, but our second LED can win the game on turn 2 unless my opponent has an answer to our plan. My opponent has Snow-Covered Island. We can breathe with some relief, so no Sanctifier on Vac on turn 2, but my opponent might have Containment Priest here. They are passing the turn. We found our LED, and my opponent found another Force of Will Exiling Ponder. So let's wait one more turn, attack him with Narcomoeba, and passing the turn. My opponent has Philia, Exuberant, Shepherd, Exuberant, and Brainstorm, and Flooded Strand. So my opponent has only 2 remaining cards in their hand, and if there's no many pieces of interaction and we find an neighbor or another land, we can still win this game. We unfortunately drew a Narcomoeba. So I attacked with our Narcomoeba and passed the turn. My opponent cracks Flooded Strand and Surveils to the top and Brainstorm. So my opponent is sculpting their hand, but no Graveyard Hate cards yet. This always gives us a hope, right? My opponent might have only removal spells, something like that. We drew, unfortunately, Cabal Therapy, so we're giving time to my opponent. And again, having 2 lands would be so good because we have an Otherworldly Gaze in our graveyard. And I think I did misplay at the beginning of this game because I could keep Volcanic Island on top, but I decided to keep only LED, right? So this game could be different if we had our second land. We found a Breakthrough. My opponent is representing Force of Will mana, so instead of casting Breakthrough, I decided to just pass the turn here. My opponent is not casting creatures, not doing much. So next turn, if we don't draw a land or other enabler, we can just discard Grave Throw and then try to resolve Breakthrough in the future. Philia is just attacking as a Grizzly Bear. We hit Faithless Looting, unfortunately no red mana, and I attack with Narcomoeba again. And now my opponent has Prismatic Vista and attacks again. My opponent's clock is faster than ours. They have a 2-2, a 1-1. This is such a weird game, a final match, Narcomoeba versus Philia. But now we have a Golgari Grave Throw in our graveyard. We'll dredge 6 here. Okay, we have Cabal Therapy, Poxwalkers. Because of that, my opponent will fire that Source of Plowshares. They don't want to reveal their hand. And I think we'll just pass back again, right? To discard Grave Throw one more time. The way my opponent is playing this game allows me to have some hope. Before nothing is happening, my opponent is just dropping lands, cracking fetches, surveying here and there, casting a Brainstorm. And then they removed my Narcomoeba with Source to Plowshares, but nothing much after that. And now they found a Quantum Riddler, which is good. My opponent will draw 2 extra cards here, and then 1 more, but they might not have a Force of Will. And we have a Cabal Therapy there. If we find an Narcomoeba, we can have a pick and then try to resolve Breakthrough. Okay, we couldn't do that, and at this point I'll just cast our Breakthrough because we have a Dredger in our graveyard. Then my opponent tries to draw more cards here, trying to find a counterspell. They couldn't, so this gives me hope to win the game. Dredge 5, and Dredge 5. We did hit Narcomoeba, and Dredge 4 because this is Breakthrough. We have Narcomoeba, we have Bridges, we have Poxwalkers. My opponent has only 1 remaining mana, so this is not decided in our favor yet, but my opponent will not have time to get rid of this Narcomoeba unless they have another Consign to Memory. And now my opponent has Lethal, and that's GG. If we had a second Narcomoeba, we could win this game. So after all, this was super balanced, and my opponent now will just win the game. Remember to not panic if you see cards like Containment Priest, Rest in Peace. Your opponent not always have them, and sometimes you can win. So we got second place here. My opponent is incredibly happy because now they have the entry to Eternal Weekend on North America, and we have the entry for the European matchup, European tournament. So guys, I had a great time playing this tournament, and the prize is awesome. I already have my tickets, my plans, my travel details, everything is ready to travel to Italy, and hopefully I will have a great moment there, gathering with other players, meeting everyone. and hopefully having a great tournament of Magic the Gathering. If you're also preparing yourself to play in North America, in Europe, in Japan, some of the Eternal Weekends, I hope you have fun. I hope you enjoy yourself playing Magic, because you cannot always win, but sometimes you win. So do your best, breathe, play your best game, and have fun. And if you're going to Italy, I hope to meet you there. See you soon on our next video. Oh, and if you want to play Dredge on Eternal Weekend, check out my Patreon page this week, patreon.com/thedredgeguy. We have several guides to play different Dredge decks in Legacy, and I'll spend 2 or 3 days this week updating our guides, considering some changes that we have in the current metagame. This way we'll be better suited to beat your opponents in every Legacy tournament. See you soon, guys. Bye.